rules of the National Council of Provinces, including the rules of debate, apply. Delegates should note that anything sent to anyone and everyone via the chat screen is deemed to have been sent to the House and may be ruled upon. Delegates enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in the sitting of the National Council of Provinces. For the purposes of the quorum, all delegates who logged in shall be considered to be present. For the duration of the sitting, delegates must mute their microphones unless if they wish to speak. And any delegate who wishes to speak should use the raise your hand function. And as we have said before, we hope and trust that members are now familiar with the raise your hand function. Honorable delegates, please note that the interpretation facility is active. And delegates are reminded to please keep their videos on for the duration of the sitting. Honorable delegates, I've been informed that there'll be no notices of motion or motions without notice. So, honorable delegates, please allow me to proceed. We'll now go ahead and proceed to the first order, policy debate on budget vote number 31, Labor and Employment Adjustment and Appropriation Bill B10-2020. I now call on Honorable Muloi, the Deputy Minister of Labor and Employment, to open the debate. Honorable
Muloi. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Dade Masondo. And thank you also to the Chairperson of our Select Committee, Dade Honorable Khai, and Honorable members of the Select Committee on Employment and Labor. Let me also take this opportunity to acknowledge our Director General, senior management of our department and its entities, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. As we meet virtually in the midst of this deadly pandemic, let me assure first and foremost, Honorable Chairperson, our Minister Ngesi, as well as the 700 departmental officials who are also currently in isolation, that you are in our prayers, and including some 130 active COVID-19 cases that we currently have as a department. And tragically, we have lost already 7 officials from our department who had already passed on. Unfortunately, one passed on yesterday. And we are assured that this was one of our highly dedicated officials from our department, from one of our entities. And we really put his families in our prayers, and we send our condolences to all those who have already passed on. Given this exceptional circumstances, Honorable Chairperson, I've decided to amalgamate my input as Deputy Minister with that of the Minister. And in 2019-2020 budget vote speech, Honorable Chair, we began with a question. We asked ourselves, what are the implications for reconfiguration and renaming of the Department of Labor to include the mandate for employment? And we concluded, among others, that job preservation and creation continue to provide a unifying vision for the department. Now, reporting back, Honorable Chairperson, on the commitment made in the 2019-2020 budget, in terms of targets achieved, unaudited figures point to 100% performance for 3 programs of the department and 50% for the remaining program. The performance ratings for the entities were NETLEC were 92%, Productivity SA 100%, and CCMA 85%. The department achieved an unqualified audit opinion, although with findings With the implementation of our clean audit campaign, honorable members, we anticipate further improvements. The department's commitment to open 10 specialized youth employment centers was overtaken by events with a strategic shift to provide self-service IT stations in 63 of our 126 labor centers. The footprint of the department and its entities is felt in every province, with an additional 36 satellite offices and 490 visiting points in remote areas. We had said from the beginning, in conjunction with the compensation fund, honorable members, we would recruit an additional 500 occupational health and safety inspectors. I must indicate now that the process of recruitment was underway. We have concluded this process, and currently the incumbents are being trained. And this process will largely, we will have concluded this process by end of this month. Whilst the passage of the Occupational Health and Safety Amendment Bill was stalled by the 2019 elections, the bill has been prioritized for legislation in the current session of Parliament. Honorable members, the Inspectorate has worked closely with CCMA to enforce the national minimum wage. We have seen some 4,300 non-compliant employers were referred to CCMA, resulting in the recovery of 20 million in short payments to workers. And to assist vulnerable workers to report underpayment, the minister this year launched the Impimpa hotline. Some 6 million workers have benefited from the implementation of the minimum wage. And the National Minimum Wage Commission will publish a full report this year on its impact in relation to employment, poverty, and inequality. And this will inform any adjustments to the minimum rate for 2021. Now, in the meantime, the minimum wage was increased in this year in line with the CPI. And in terms of the total referrals to CCMA, the greatest incidence was in the business, security, retail, construction, and domestic sectors. The CCMA plays a critical role in stabilizing the labor market. And during 2019-2020, engagements with parties saved the jobs of 42% of employees facing retrenchment under Section 189A referrals, amounting in total of 68,000 jobs which were saved. Honorable members, our enforcement capacity is also strengthened by the numerous joint inspections across the country with other departments, including but not limited to the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, the Department of Transport, which have participated in most of our joint operations. But I need to give you this example, honorable members, that in July recently, in this month, on the 17th, we conducted joint inspections with Home Affairs and SAPS of 41 places across the retail and wholesale sector in Hermanas in particular, to determine the compliance with sectoral regulations, UIF and COEDA, as well as illegal employment of undocumented foreign nationals. There was, I must indicate, honorable members, that there was a 46% compliance rate. These joint inspections allowed problems to be immediately addressed on the spot. And where there is non-compliance, we provide a notice to close with immediate effect. The compensation fund, honorable members, prioritized the rehabilitation and return to work program underpinned by proposed amendments to the COEDA. And in 2019-2020 budget vote, we committed to leverage the resources of the department and its entities, including the UIF and the CF, to preserve jobs and to invest in job creation. The compensation fund makes provision for 10% of its assets to go towards social responsible investment. And to date, 2.3 billion has been committed, resulting in nearly 10,000 sustained jobs. The fund has also jointly with the UIF committed to invest 1.4 billion in the SME fund, of which an initial 400 million investment has been made to provide venture capital to support small businesses. The UIF, as part of the October 2018 Job Summit commitment, has refocused its labor activation program to direct support to distressed companies to preserve jobs via the temporary employee relief scheme, and by supporting training that is directly tied to employment. And in 2019-2020, 33 companies were supported, at a cost of 120 million, directly saving 4,000 jobs. Additionally, labor activation programs for 2019-2020 have further extended support to Denel in the form of fixed interest securities to the tune of 2.3 billion, preserving 2,360 jobs. We invested 350 million in NCOP Pty Ltd, contributing to preserving 8,000 jobs while transferring 1.2 billion to the IDC, helping to create and preserve 6,660 jobs. In 2019-2020 Employment Equity Annual Report, again, honorable members, reflected the slow pace of transformation in the workplace. It was with this in mind that the Employment Equity Amendment Bill 2019 was approved by Cabinet in February 2020. The bill empowers the minister to regulate sector-specific targets and to prescribe employment equity compliance as a prerequisite for assisting state contracts. The department has developed a code of good practice on the prevention and elimination of violence and harassment in the workplace, which will go for public comment and as a step towards the ratification of the ILO Convention 190. The department, honorable members, provides subsidies to support 10 organizations providing employment to 950 workers with disabilities. We also have our own entities providing employment to 1,150 workers with disabilities under the Supported Employment Enterprise Program, producing high quality school furniture, office furniture, home furniture, and hospital linen. And now we have repurposed this SEE to produce PPE products of high quality, by the way. And the 13 factories that we have as a department across the country include in every province, with the exception of Mpumalanga, where a facility is planned for the current financial year of 2020-2021. You will also recall that the Labor the Labor Relations Act was amended to address violent and unprotected industrial actions. And this has contributed to relative labor market stability during 2019-2020. And earlier this month, Honorable Chairperson, Productivity South Africa presented findings indicating that South Africa's global productivity competitiveness ranking had fallen from position 56 in 2019 to position 59 in 2020. We are determined to work through Productivity SA to advocate a culture of productivity and competitiveness. Turning to the budget priorities now for 2020-2021, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members, and the adjusted allocations. The main appropriation of 3.6 billion has been subjected to a 262 million suspension of funds, which amounts to a reduction of 7.2%. And this reduction, affected mainly on goods and services items, will be cascaded throughout the department, resulting in a reduction to provincial office allocation of 104 million. Priorities for this financial year 2020-2021 include the following, honorable members. Public employment services in a joint program with higher education funded by the EU will purchase 24 mobile units to operate across all provinces. And this represents a strategic shift from bricks and mortar centers to taking services to the people, reducing the travel cost of work seekers and recognizing the new realities of social distancing in the era of COVID-19. The current 63 self-service IT stations will be expanded to all 126 labor centers. And as part of a larger project to develop a national employment policy, labor migration policy development is being fast-tracked both to address immediate challenges as in the road freight sector, where protests originating mainly from KZN have now spread along main routes into other provinces, and as well as to coordinate labor migration policies with our neighbors and the continent. Honorable members, the UIF is revamping its call center to support its vision to provide online solutions to clients. And these are the lessons we have learned from the COVID-19 health benefits model, which we will now customize and apply to normal UIF benefits. The UIF is also committed to implementing its Section 5D obligations under the UI Act as amended. it will set aside 10% of its assets to labor activation programs in support of jobs and training geared to the changing needs of the labor market. The UIF has committed 394 million to funding training for 26,000, of which 50% will be youth and women. And 5.9 million is committed to finance the interventions of the CCMA to preserve jobs. The fund will provide 104 million to Productivity SA to support some 6,000 SMMEs and to improve productivity, to preserve and create more jobs. And these programs are implemented across all provinces and in proportion to population spread. So, honorable members, in 2020-2021, the department targets to retain 40,700 UIF contributors in work. And I want to flag that in line with government priorities, the annual performance plan for 2020-2021 has added one output for program one, focusing on internal campaign to change behavior in relation to gender-based violence in the workplace. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, the momentous development of this year required a commensurate response from the Department of Employment and Labor, including repurposing the UIF to provide income support to temporarily laid-off workers, a tenfold increase in benefit payments. To date, some 34.6 billion in benefits has been distributed through employers in 7.6 million payments to recipients. This was in line with the commitment to provide income support for 3 months. It gave me great pleasure, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, to announce that last week, following due diligence and consultation with the UIF actuaries, and in line with the President's decision to extend the life of the Disaster Management Act until the 15th of August, we have similarly, honorable members, extended the COVID-19 TERS benefit until the 15th of August 2020. And this benefit reach every corner of the country, from the largest in terms of laid-off workers, Gauteng, which received 16.5 billion and in 3.5 million payments, to the smallest, which is the Northern Cape, which received 342 million in 75,000 payments, and to the Western Cape at the midpoint, which received 5.7 billion in 1.3 million payments. This supports laid-off workers and their families and provides a much-needed cash injection into local economies. Honorable members, the provision of COVID-19 TERS benefits also required strict financial controls. I'm reassured that it was the UIF itself which detected the recent attempted fraudulent activity, and I'm also encouraged by the speedy response of law enforcement agencies to charge the culprits. Where we find evidence of collusion from officials, we will take similar swift action that we assure you, honorable members. The COVID benefit measures also required engagement with business and labor in network, and to make possible bulk disbursements of benefits via employers and bargaining councils. I also commend the work of NETLEC's COVID Rapid Response Unit, which has provided leadership throughout the pandemic, developing directions and regulations across relevant fields, including health and safety, transport and social development, as well as sourcing PPEs and medical equipment. The pandemic has also shone a light on gaps in our social security provision, honorable members, like, for instance, the current exclusion of non-standard employees and those who fall outside the traditional employer-employee relationship, meaning those who are self-employed, who are falling outside the employer-employee relationship. Going forward, this will be the subject of our comprehensive policy review to be conducted through NETLEC. I also should mention that from the start of the lockdown, honorable members, the UIF continued to pay normal UIF benefits, and to date, 4.3 billion in 750,000 payments has been effected. And in March, the Compensation Fund announced our intention to consider any claim from workers who contract the virus while at work. 1,400 COVID-19 claims are currently being processed, and the fund has also focused on strengthening its online application system in advance of an uptick in claims. And for this, for those employers and healthcare practitioners who still experience challenges in accessing the ComEasy system, the fund is embarking on a national campaign to assist stakeholders to be able to comply and to be able to access the system itself. And as the risk-adjusted alert level moved from 5 to 4 and then to 3, the department developed a new health and safety directives working with NEDLAC to protect workers and clients in the workplace. The Labour Inspectorate is focused on the enforcement of these regulations, and we look to socially responsible, those responsible employers, unions, and workers to support these efforts. As the health crisis moved into deepening economic crisis, I would like to flag the following, honorable members. The work of NEDLAC in facilitating engagements to prioritize job summit commitments to refocus on growth and jobs as part of national economic reconstruction plans. It cannot be that we combat this present crisis only to return to the previous systemic crisis of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. So for the department and its entities, we are focused on coordinated programs of job creation and preservation, the kind of a joined up government, which the president has referred to. Honorable members, finally, our thanks as the ministry goes to the staff of the department, the commissioners, the executives of our entities, led by the DG, for their commitment and hard work in achieving targets and continuing to provide services in difficult conditions. Honorable Chairperson, I hereby table the budget of the Department of Employment and Labour, vote 31 to the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mloyi. We will now move on to Honorable Khai. Honorable Khai.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Chief Whip, Deputy Minister of Employment and Labour, Minister of Small Business Development, MECs present, fellow honorable members. On behalf of the Select Committee, I wish to add my word of condolences to the family of the late Dade Andrew Mlangeni and his organization, the African National Congress. Dade Mlangeni bore the scars of apartheid capitalist exploitation. As a bus driver in 1946, he was one of the workers who heeded the call to embark on a strike for better wages and better working conditions. As a young man in 1961, he was one of the first volunteers to join Umkhonto weSizwe, and he was sent for military training abroad. His passing symbolizes the exit from the theater of struggle of a generation of freedom fighters who distinguished themselves as brave, patriotic, and incorruptible. I also wish to pay tribute to the Minister of Employment and Labour, Comrade Thulas Nxesi, who has been in hospital after testing positive for COVID-19, as well as other members of the executive and members of parliament and their families. Wish them and all other South Africans who are ill a speedy recovery. Also express word of condolences to staff members of the Department of Employment and Labour who have passed away. We pass our condolences to their families as well. The coronavirus pandemic has impacted the economies and working people of the world massively. Recent estimates suggest that over 80% of the global population has been under some level of lockdown. In South Africa, government decided on an initial 21 days of lockdown, which was extended at different levels of easing and accompanying regulations. Unavoidable, the labor markets in our country and globally went into a downward spiral as workers could not go to work. International Labour Organization estimates that 81% of the global workforce of 3.3 billion people have had their workplaces fully or partly closed. Consequently, the ILO estimates that within this year, over 400 million workers in the formal sector will lose their jobs, while 1.6 billion workers in the informal sector have lost income and livelihood. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted many of South African government's programs and plans for this year. it has changed the economic outlook, which was already negative, to something much worse. A study released early this month estimates that between February and April, about 3 million workers lost their jobs. 2/3 of these workers were women. What is even more concerning is that the job and income losses were concentrated among Black people, women, low-wage earners, and unskilled workers. This situation will lead to the widening of income and wealth inequality gap that was already unacceptable in our country. The National Treasury estimates that the revenue shortfall will result from the lockdown measures and global restriction to trade and travel will be around 300 billion. The loss of revenue has necessitated the suspension and reprioritization of government spending in some programs. In order to respond to the immediate impact of pandemic on the health of our people and our country economy, the Minister of Finance tabled the special adjustment budget on the 24th of June 2020. This adjustment budget is a practical implementation of the estimated 500 billion rand economic relief package that was announced by the president. Some parties seem to conflate this process with the ordinary adjustment budget and the medium-term budget policy statement that will be tabled in October in terms of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act. These are two separate processes. We know that the appropriation for the budget voted on in February budget was 3.6 billion for 2020-2021 financial year. It has been adjusted downwards by 261.9 million or 7.2% to 3.4 billion. Some of the most affected programs include the public employment services and the labor policy and industrial relations, which transfer funds to the CCMA. This must be a temporary measure because the caseload of the CCMA has increased enormously as a result of dispute related to retrenchment and lockdown. The demand for network services as an institution for social dialogue has also increased. Network is where social compact to address economic issues arising from COVID-19 pandemic have to be concluded. Logically, this entity must also receive more funding in the adjustment budget. The department has been one of the frontline departments in government's economic response to COVID-19. The Unemployment Insurance Fund, UIF, has had to adapt its system to the new reality where millions of workers were laid off or placed on leave of absence for months by their companies. Although there were a number of teething problems which resulted in many workers not having their claims processed timeously, the UIF has undertaken to pay all valid claims which were not paid as it begins to wind down the massive campaign of supporting workers through the worst effects of the coronavirus pandemic. The department reported last week that the entity had paid out 34 billion in 7.4 million payments. The department in the past week has disbursed 372 million of COVID cares benefit claims. We have also noted with serious concern that as the department tries to finalize payments that are still outstanding, some unscrupulous individuals have attempted to defraud the scheme. The most daring of these cases was the 5.7 million that was meant for 1,400 workers. We congratulate the department, as the Deputy Minister has also said, the Hawks for their swift action to apprehend the suspects in this case. It has also emerged that some companies have tried to claim on behalf of people who were deceased, while others use non-existent ID numbers. Some of the delays of payment to deserving workers were caused by the fact that the UIF had to strengthen its system and checks and balances. The department had the responsibility to oversee the adherence to the lockdown regulation by employers. It also had to issue directives with regard to employees who contracted COVID-19 in work-related exposures. We commend government for the decision it has taken to extend the COVID-19 health benefits to 15 August 2020. These benefits were initially meant to run until the end of June. This is clear evidence that the ANC government is in sync with the needs of the working people in our country during this difficult time. As a result of the rapid spread of COVID-19, labor centers where thousands of newly jobless workers will have gone for assistance for UIF benefits were temporarily closed. We know that a number of departments' employees were asked to go into self-isolation, and the number of employees in offices were reduced to ensure social distancing. We mourn with the department and family of the 6 staff members who have lost their lives to the virus. Last week, the department has announced a temporary closure of its local offices in Emalahleni and Bethal in Mpumalanga due to positive cases of COVID-19. We urge workers to blow the whistle on the business.
Less than 1 minute left.
We urge workers to blow the whistle on the businesses that are not complying with COVID-19 regulation. We also salute the inspectors who have closed the several businesses in the Western Cape town of Niger this past week. We are concerned about the reports that Niger was becoming a hotspot with over 100 cases of non-compliance already confirmed. Despite the COVID-19 setback, the ANC believes firmly that Africa's youthful population present a potential competitive advantage that can launch our continent as the new powerhouse of global production. This requires that South Africa and other African countries must invest in skill development, economic infrastructure, health, social development, and greater participation and inclusion of young people and women. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Honorable H.S. Boshoff.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable members, fellow South Africans, allow me to extend my good wishes to the Minister and wish him a speedy recovery, and to all other South Africans who find themselves either in isolation or hospitals, a speedy recovery as well. And may I then also extend my condolences on behalf of myself and my party to the official that has lost his life with regard to this COVID, and wish his family everything of the best. Honourable Chair, South Africa has found itself in the world's longest and most damaging lockdown, and still the absurdity continues, especially at a time of desperate financial struggle for many of our citizens, as the Department of Employment and Labour has left many an employee in the lurch. With an employment rate of 30.1% and rising, we are looking at around an additional 7 million people being unemployed by the end of August this year. This department cannot allow the continuing backlogs, administrative paralysis, draconian regulations, bureaucratic disarray that is currently the order of the day at the UIF to continue unabated. The aim of the department is to play a significant role in reducing unemployment, poverty, and inequality by pursuing the objectives of decent work for all, by helping to create the economic development environment and encourage employment through creation and enterprise development. However, this is something which we have not seen being undertaken pre and post COVID-19. Many employees saw the TERS UIF fund as their only lifeline to keep their families alive and afloat, but have unfortunately been left disillusioned as their applications have either been unsuccessful or not even yet captured. Even though the DA warned that the UIF would be overwhelmed by the task of administering the COVID-19 TERS benefits, together with the ordinary claims, the realization only dawned at this department at a very late stage. Shame on you. Many businesses, which were once thriving industries, adding much to the fiscus and providing critically needed employment, are still closed and bleeding. This is a suicide mission by the ANC. It would appear as if this government is intent on keeping the handbrake pulled up and allowing many employees to forfeit their lives and livelihoods. This is a clear indication that there is no leadership forthcoming from the ANC whatsoever, as there has been no plan to indicate how the rising unemployment rate will be curbed. Honourable Deputy Minister, today, please enlighten the nation as to the current situation of your department and whether they are competent enough to save a nation in distress. This department has seen a huge number of UIF fraud cases, with 75 being the last figure we were given. And in the case of an employee who wired 5.7 million of these funds to his own family and was subsequently released on a 5,000 Rand bail after appearing in court. In the Sunday papers of 26 July, we were alerted to yet another incident of fraud to the value of 700,000 in KZN. All I can say is that this sends a resounding message to greedy officials and crooks that it is okay to create your own slush fund using public money. Honourable Deputy Minister, measures should have been in place when this department was entrusted with the 40 billion relief fund. Due to contracting COVID-19, the minister is unfortunately not here today, but at a meeting on 3 July, he said that he was keenly aware of the dangers of huge amounts and of the inherent risks for fraud, and yet only after the money was unlawfully taken did he and his department jump to get systems in place, a whole 2 months too late. Another area of concern is that CCMA has had its budget cut by a whopping 55 million. This body has been doing outstanding work, assisting applicants who have inter alia been unfairly dismissed or retrenched. With this huge cut, this system will be destroyed, leaving millions of employees destitute. A huge health crisis, which is about to explode, will be at labour centres, as many applicants have to visit these centres in person due to them not having access to online facilities and are now unwittingly being exposed to the contraction of the disease as officials are not adhering to protocols such as social distancing or providing hand sanitizers. What then, Honourable Deputy Minister, was the use of the appointment of queue marshals if people can still come and go as they wish? This appears to be another wasteful expenditure. Honourable Chair, if this incapable state does not get their act together, this country, which is already seeing the insurrection with the burning of public facilities like schools, clinics, and libraries, together with illegal land invasions and utter lawlessness, there will be nothing left for future generations. Government has lost the goodwill of South Africans with their illogical and nonsensical regulations and must be alert to the fact that they will no longer sit back and accept what is dished up. Desperate times, Deputy Minister, call for desperate measures. The DA will not rest until all business communities are freed up to allow them to do what they do best, which is to provide a valuable source of income to many job seekers and add to the growth of the economy. We will also do everything in our power to support the workers of South Africa to get what is rightfully theirs, namely the UIF payments as they and their employers contributed to the fund. This money, Honourable Chair and Honourable Deputy Minister, does not belong to government or the greedy thieves that have already looted, even if they think they do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Boshoff. We'll now move on to Honourable Plenary. Honourable Plenary.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the EFF rejects the vote of the Department of Employment and Labour. We can all agree that the renaming of the department was nothing but a useless, meaningless PR exercise. When Mr. President Cyril Ramaphosa was elected to president by the National Assembly in February 2018, unemployment was at 27.7%. Today, the unemployment rate has increased to 30.1%. When Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa became president in 2018, the number of unemployed people and people who have given up hope on finding work was 8.6 million. Today, the number of unemployed people and people who have given up finding work has increased to 10 million. And this has nothing to do with COVID-19. These are figures reported well before COVID-19 and its restrictions. There were no jobs before COVID-19, and there are not going to be any jobs during or after COVID. In the Eastern Cape, for instance, where unemployment is rife and many depend on the rural economy and survival for job losses have been at a staggering high. Ilima small-scale farmers in Simo at Wat 9 in Raymond Saba municipality in the Eastern Cape has seen the closure of farming project run by 14 young farmers during this period. In Engushwa, the Sinesipo cotton wool producers in Wat 11 Kababa in Ngushwa municipality in the Eastern Cape has closed down, affecting the livelihood of 30 women running this project together with the community they employed. Majority of workers who have gone back to work under level 3 are doing so in very difficult conditions. This is not only happening in mines, it is happening in hotels, retails, manufacturing, and government buildings. Workers are going to work without PPEs in workplaces that do not have safety protocols in place. Our people are dying because they are getting infected by COVID-19 at work. After all, there are not enough inspectors. Workers are retrenched without following proper procedure. Workers are not receiving UIF benefits and COVID-19 relief benefits, but in system, the claim was approved and paid. I listened to the minister when he spoke about the COVID here. You have about 1,500 workers here in Takama were expelled because they were claiming the UIF money, which they have not received even today. Today, those workers are without work. As the EFF, we have taken matters into our own hands and opened a labor desk. Since we took this decisive and practical step, hundreds of cases have landed in our desk, and we are trying to resolve as many of these cases as possible. We have to take such a drastic step because we could not continue to turn our people back and say they must go to government when the government has actually collapsed. Despite these challenges, the proposed budget aimed to reduce the department's allocation. To support the budget vote is to support and to celebrate the failure by government to protect workers. The EFF therefore reject the adjusted budget vote of unemployment and labor. Thank you very much, Chair.
Sharp, leader. Well said, leader.
Thank you, leader.
Yes, thank you very much. The next speaker,
Chairperson, the COVID-19 pandemic has challenged health sectors across the world and ravaged the global economy. Just last week, Chairperson, South African Reserve Bank cut the repo rates to 3.5%, an all-time low. The SARB has also forecasted a 7% contraction on the economy. the labor market has been one of the hardest hit. The unemployment rate has increased with conservative estimate of 1.7 million jobs lost over lockdown period. Young people, women, and people with disability are the most vulnerable, Chairperson. Now, more than ever, this department must fulfill its mandate and find innovative ways to sustain the livelihoods of those South Africans who has been affected. Whilst the department's top priority is the assistance of South African workforce, the health and safety of departmental staff is also a key concern. This has resulted in a significant portion of budget going to purchase PPE and other safety measures affecting the reverse budget. The IFP believes the department must implement reasonable and sustainable measures for worker safety, but at the same time strike balance so as to not overregulate. This will only place additional resource drain on already struggling businesses. The IFP also believes that targeted intervention will be instrumental in assisting those who find themselves unable or without work. The IFP urges the department to be vigilant when exercising its mandate to limit the kind of corruption we have already seen with the theft from the UIF funds. Further, the CCM must be adequately supported as the caseload increases because of retrenchment and unfair labor practice. The IFP encourages a balance to be established, which is reasonably for safety being collective one. It is of critical importance, Chairperson, that South Africa keeps its workforce safely and working. I thank you. I will support the adjusted budget.
Thank you very much, Madam Faela. The next speaker is going to be Honorable Landsman. Honorable Landsman.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you. Good day, Honorable members. One of the lessons from history is that from the greatest human crisis, the possibilities of human advances are abundant. But in order to make use of such opportunities, those in leadership of government, business, labor, and civil society must be imbued with the foresight of creativity. As former US Barack Obama Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel famously said, "You never let a serious crisis go to waste." What we meant by that was that a crisis presents an opportunity to do things always wanted to do, but could not do because of objectives and subjective constraints that existed before it. So even in the darkest hour, we must prepare for the brighter future. As at the heart of this future in South Africa, we must be the building of the new economic that benefits all of our people and contributes as an engine of growth in the Southern African region and the African continent. As previous speakers have said, the capabilities of South Africa state has been tested to the limit. Even the hardest critics in South Africa, in the ANC government, would agree that the scorecard is mostly positive. The achievements in the past 6 months have shown what is possible. Today, I want to highlight the possibilities in the economic recovery interventions to stabilize and empower South African labor market as part of social compact. I highlighted the leadership, the role of the Department of Employment and Labor, its entities, and the work with other departments and social partners. We are holding this debate, Budget Vote 31, on the virtual platform and not in the chamber in Cape Town, as we would have done since '94. The coronavirus pandemic and its economic fallout have been described by leading economists as the unprecedented in our generation. Projections paint a grim picture. According to the World Bank, we are into the worst global recession since World War II. The Bank of England reports the deepest economic downturn in 300 years will hit UK. China, which was a pivotal rescuing of the global economic after 2008 Great Recession, is experiencing the slowest annual growth since the death of Chairman Mao in 1976. The US has registered the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression in the 1930s. As we continue to register a surge in the number of infections, virus average above 10,000 cases per day. South Africa is now in the grip of the pandemic with a devastating impact on the firms, workers, and communities, even before the national lockdown was announced towards the end of March. Many companies were already closing their doors and laying off thousands of workers because of their global supply chains were disrupted. South Africans have proven again that we are resilient people. We together during these times of hardship comfort a common enemy and the triumph against adversity. The image of our most diverse Rugby World Cup nation team will be led by a young black captain who lifted the cup last year against all odds and in process of inspiring a whole generation of young South Africans to believe in themselves is still fresh in our minds. The inequity of our workers have been shown when global supply chains broke down and we could not buy ventilators elsewhere in the world. The Team South Africa showed a formidable fortitude by failing back on our own enterprises and innovation. The industry has been able to scale up local manufacturing of basic COVID-19 supplies, quickly ramping up production of medical grade masks from 6 million to 13 million units a month. About 2 months ago, we welcomed the donation of 10,000 ventilations from the United States of America, but in the past week, the first units of locally made ventilators are being assembled in our local factories. About 20,000 units will be produced locally. As a joint effort between some of our leading scientists and industrialists, such immense capacity of South African nation, we dare not doubt ourselves again. The Department of Employment Labor supported the enterprise program, has played a dynamic role with its support for the employment of 1,150 persons with disabilities in 13 factories. We applaud the department that these workers who normally manufacture furniture, linen, have been able to reproduce their production capacity to produce PPE. We welcome the improved stability of the labor market attributed to the recent amendments of the Labor Act and consequent decline in the number of violent unprotected industrial actions. However, we must express our concern about the report published 2 weeks ago by the Productivity South Africa, one of the department's entities, that our global productivity ranking has fallen from 56th position in 2019 to 59 this year. We must seek to understand the lies that are the phenomenon. At the same time, we must resist the new liberal explanation favored by the right wing, the likes of DA and the Freedom Front, amongst others, that our labor laws are too rigid and the trade unions have too much power. Research and the world has proven that this is ideological dogma, that it is not supported by evidence. The countries such as Denmark, Germany, with some of the highest productivity in the world, have far more powerful trade unions in protections of the rights of workers collectively bargaining. The US, on the other hand, with far less protection of workers, ranks the lower than these countries and its workers. Conclusion, we must recognize the historical moment and opportunities that crisis provided. We must build even greater resilience by deepening capacity, reindustrialize our economic and unapologetically promoting Buy South Africa campaign. Inspection Enforcement branch of department must continue working to ensure adherence of the national minimum wage by its employees. Industries must work together with organized labor to find ways in which they can support to recover without opting for layoffs and efforts. The cuts of the department budget are quite substantial, while at the same time we need our firms, workers grown as a result of the damage caused by the pandemic. Under these circumstances, there is a need for innovation, maximum in the impact available of resources. Recovery efforts require coordination, fresh thinking, and a different way of working. These must include harnessing of the opportunities provided by the fourth industrial revolution, just transition, the greener economic proposals, leverage local procurement, advancing regional integration. The work of companies to pay out unemployment to millions of workers must enable the department to and businesses to work together to empower workers in the workplace, the relevant training skills that are needed to improve productivity and overall health as they recover from COVID-19. Townships, rural enterprises, including digital hubs, must scale up in collaboration with private sector. Creative industry sectors must be supported as it provides opportunities for youth, showcase their talent and jobs. We support, as the ANC, we support this vote.
much, Honorable Landsman. The next speaker is Honorable T.J. Protesef, Tim.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, fellow South Africans. In 1994, the employment rate stood at 20.5% as per a study released by government in a GCIS publication. The factors inherent in this woeful state of affairs, as per the same GCIS report, are inadequate education and productivity, the kind of productivity Honourable Landsman is talking about, that is costing jobs. Unemployment increases progressively with decreased educational skills, and the education system is not producing the skills for the labour market. And we all know who has overseen government business, including education, since 1994. But wait, there is more. According to CEIC data, South Africa's employment rate is forecasted to be 35.313% in December 2020, as reported by the International Monetary Fund. It records a decrease from the last reported number of 28.7% in December 2019. Looking ahead, South Africa's unemployment rate is projected to stand at 34.1% in December 2021. Recent findings by the National Income Dynamics Survey and a coronavirus rapid mobile survey reflect that 3 million jobs have been lost since between February and April 2020 due to lockdown regulations. 3 million jobs, 3 million families affected, all on the ANC watch. But wait, there is still more. The same survey reflected that 47% of the 7,000 respondents interviewed related that they had run out of money to buy food. This figure has risen exponentially from 21% before lockdown. 58% of these respondents sadly related that they were unable to shield their children from hunger. As a father, I shudder at the thought of explaining to my child that I cannot feed her. It fills me with shame as a legislator that this ANC government has caused so much carnage. And what does the government do to resolve the situation? It turns around and attempts to destroy the very businesses that employ South Africans. The ANC government is literally throttling the goose that laid the golden egg. Numerous businesses struggling to operate under unscientific and ill-advised lockdown regulations that have been unable to comply with the national minimum wage regulations have been visited by well-paid government inspectors and have been subjected to the most draconian forms of punishment. Our labour law encourages employers to apply corrective and progressive disciplinary procedures when dealing with employees. But when the tables are turned, then the government applies capital punishment to our employers with a seemingly clear imperative to wipe the businesses out. Any employer found guilty of underpaying employees, regardless of the reason, is fined twice the value of the underpayment and given 2 weeks to pay. And if they can't, the fine is tripled. And if that still does not work, then all the possessions of the business will be attached and the business will go under. This is a common scenario under bizarre lockdown regulations imposed by this government. And more unemployment will ensue, driving the employment crisis ever higher. In fact, it seems that this government is doing everything it can to persecute employers instead of helping them. And then the same employers, the same government that tries to destroy these businesses turns to the same employers and holds out their grubby hands for donations to float institutions like the Solidarity Fund. The hypocrisy of this ANC government is sickening. The headlong pursuit to drive employees into the ground will surely impoverish the future of South Africa. In conclusion, I leave the council with this thought. The dedication to ideology is directly proportional from the distance to the problem. It is clear from the government's approach to employers that few, if any, of the governing elites have ever owned a business, grappled with the difficulties inherent therein, or carried the burden of a workforce dependent on the success of a business. In terms of this reality and the apparent ignorance of fact by this department, the DA cannot support this budget vote. I thank you.
The next speaker is Honorable S.F. de Tooit. Honorable de Tooit.
Thank you, Chair. Die mens wik, maar God beskik. Suid-Afrika kan nie op jou vertrou nie, minister. Jy kan hom nie red nie. Die huidige wetgewing ook nie. Minister, Deputy Minister, is it possible not to feel regret for being part of the reason the country is in turmoil and hunger? How can one go to bed at night with a clear conscience, knowing that you are part of the reason that so many people have failed dismally due to ideologically skewed laws and legislation that broke the legs of our already crippled economy? The Freedom Front Plus warned against this. Chair, South Africans know that our economy has declined to an all-time low. They know that 3 million jobs were lost during the lockdown because it was their jobs that were lost. They know that 1.5 million workers lost their income because they had to face their families. 74% of South African households ran out of money to buy food, Chair. 22% reported that someone in a household went hungry in the past week, and 8% reported frequent child hunger in the last 3 months, 3 or more days. Blamed for the situation South Africa currently finds itself in. Years of looting and cadre deployment and the current strict labor laws restrict jobs creation from taking place. Government can't create jobs. An environment that is conducive for job creation must be created in South Africa. We can't afford to stay a welfare state, Chair. Adjunct Minister, die skokkende moontlikheid is dat u die erns van die huidige situasie begryp en dit moontlik ondersteun. Dit wil voorkom of die poging om die ekonomie onder dwang te transformeer die ekonomie grootendeels vernietig en dit uit selfsug. Hoe hardop moet mens wees om aan bewind te bly as dit voorkom of jy 'n kollektief, jou broers en susters, jou kinders, jou landsgenote as kanonvoer opoffer in die naam van 'n radikale ekonomiese transformasie? Dis betreurenswaardig dat iemand so laag sal daal om ten spyte daarvan dat daar genoegsame bewyse is dat swart ekonomiese bemagtiging en regstellende aksie nie vrugte afwerk nie, dit steeds voorskryf en dat dit geïmplementeer moet word. Hoe pateties dat wette gebruik word om gewildheid by sommige te wen om jou tekortkominge as regering te verbloem. Jay, it seems that for some people it's easier to lie to the world than to be honest to themselves. Just admit it for once. The ANC government got us where we are today. They are the reason so many people are without an income and employment today. The budget is insufficient and not applied to benefit all South Africans. And we as South Africans must, however, not allow government to take our dignity, our humanity, our pride, our positive attitude. We mustn't allow these clouds of doom and negativity to steal our ability to survive through these circumstances. Soveel van ons weet hoe dit voel om op moedverlose vlakte te sit. Ons kan egter nie dat die omstandighede en onregverdigheid ons passie om te bou demp nie. Ons as Suid-Afrikaners het 'n plig teenoor onsself, ons medemens, ons kinders en teenoor God om nie moed te verloor nie. Jesaja 40 vers 30 tot 31 spel dit uit. Die jonges word moeg en mat, die jong manne struikel selfs, maar die wat op die Here wag, kry nuwe krag. Hulle vaar op met vleuels soos arende, hulle hardloop en word nie moeg nie, hulle wandel en word nie mat nie. Ons het 'n plig om mekaar se laste te dra. Ons is hier om te bou en nie af te breek nie. Ons het soveel keer in die geskiedenis uit niks iets positiefs laat voorkom. Dit is in ons aard om met ons kop omhoog elke uitdaging die hoof te bied en deur moeilike omstandighede te kom. Suid-Afrika mag nie toelaat dat die ANC regering ons moet breek nie. In closing, Chair, as ons struikel, moet dit nie as 'n swakheid gesien word nie. Dit is op ons knieë waar ons krag vind. Die VF+ stryd die stryd saam met elkeen wat negatief deur die regering se wette en inperkings geraak word. Ons veg vir jou regte. Ons veg vir jou nalatenskap. Ons veg vir ons nalatenskap. Die mens wik, maar God beskik. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Honorable J.J. Lunt.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, and Honorable members. I'm going to take you back to a speech that I delivered in the NCOP almost 5 years ago. And the words that I used in that speech just follows. Following on from the rising unemployment, the Unemployment Insurance Fund will be put in the spotlight, a spotlight they can ill afford. They are the lifeline for many who have been thrust in the uncertain world of unemployment, yet they are not the beacon of hope. Instead, adding to stress and anxiety by being disorganized, long waiting times, lost documentation, and 1,001 excuses not to pay. Come back to today, and nothing has changed. There were promises of proposed changes that were welcome, yet nothing improved. No progress were made, and South Africans suffer due to this department's incompetence. Honorable Gai, I want to add my voice in support of the condolences you conveyed to the family of the late Andrew Malangeni, to the families, friends, and the other loved ones of every single person in South Africa who lost their lives due to the COVID pandemic. I also endorse your valid criticism of businesses and individuals in the private sector who are abusing this crisis and the financial relief measures that's there to benefit everybody, but they benefit themselves. It's unacceptable that anyone prey on the most vulnerable. Honorable Gai, you correctly raised the alarm bells of the 3 million additional people who lost their jobs, their way of providing for themselves, their families, their livelihoods during this crisis. I actually sat up and waited with bated breath for you to also criticize your colleagues. The same way we all condemn the private sector when they steal from the vulnerable. But alas, you said nothing, because in the twisted minds of ANC cadres, it's only a crime to steal when you are not in the ANC. If you're in the ANC and you loot the coffers meant for the poor, you get promoted to the SG of the party, or the Eastern Cape sends you from Buffalo City to the NCOP and make you the chair of petitions and executive undertakings, to name but a few. Honorable Landsman, I'm glad my camera was not on when you spoke, because I literally fell off my chair when you spoke and said the scorecard is mostly positive when it came to government's performance during this pandemic. I therefore then assumed that you are in Oudtshoorn for the lockdown, because similar to the birds this town is known for, your head is probably stuck up somewhere. And when you came up for air, you only saw the Western Cape performance during this pandemic, and not how your ANC colleagues plundered the relief funds for lavish lifestyles instead of feeding a nation. Colleagues, by looking the other way and keeping quiet, you are complacent in the wrong that is being done by those individuals that steal and plunder for their own pockets. Mark my words, history will judge you very, very harshly. Your children, your grandchildren, and the generations to come should know the names of every single member in this NCOP, in the National Assembly, who sat by quietly, who didn't say a word when money that was meant for the poor got stolen to enrich a few connected few. You should be ashamed of yourself. The rampant corruption that's running through our country is putting our entire future at risk. You can clap yourself on the shoulder by making speeches that praise the ANC. History will judge you. It's time you start looking the crisis in the eye and address it. Let's stand together and fight this. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lord. We'll now move over to Honorable K. Mwima. Honorable Mwima.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Let me also take this opportunity to express my deepest condolences to the Mlangeni family, and that indeed their loss is also our loss as the Congress movement. Honorable Chair, I'm also paying due recognition to all honorable members that are in this House and our special delegates. Indeed, most of us, Honorable Chair, would like to see the year 2020 over as soon as possible. The coronavirus pandemic has plunged even the strongest economies in the world into crisis. It has almost decimated sectors like travel and tourism that have created millions of direct and indirect jobs in the world and in our own country. When the world is confronted with an unprecedented challenges as this one, Honorable Chair, humanity should come together to protect the most vulnerable members of society. And we have no doubt that indeed the ANC-led government continues to be on the right path in defense of the most vulnerable. However, it is clear that in a polarized world where, among others, winning political power by any means is the name of the game. Even the fight against an invisible enemy that kills both wealthy and poor divides people along party and racial lines rather than unites them. Hence, utterances from our honorable members from the right. Indeed, as the ANC, we rise in support of Vote 31, employment and labor. In dealing with this debate, Chair, I will raise interventions that were indeed reiterated by both my chair and also the Deputy Minister in response to COVID-19 pandemic, including partnership with the private sector and organized labor. I will also focus on the role of health and safety requirements in curbing the spread of the virus in workplaces and support provider firms to be ready for full economic activity, the role of the UIF and also compensation fund to mitigate the devastating impact of the pandemic. Honorable Chair, the Chair and the Deputy Minister has correctly outlined the policy imperative of the department and how the department has been in the forefront of the economic response to the pandemic. Indeed, there was reference by the Minister to the macro reorganization of the state, but in particular, how the department was reconfigured. And indeed, the Minister in his presentation of the strat plan and the APP did indicate to us that amongst the key indicator that was pointed out to him in his performance agreement with the president is that there has to be job creation, employment has to be created. Chair, indeed, the Deputy Minister made reference to the manner in which the department achieved unqualified audit opinion and how it performed in terms of its targets. Chairperson, I think what is critical also is to appreciate the fact that the Department of Labor and indeed the whole government has been compelled by the crisis to respond in a non-traditional way. And therefore, the various steps that it took reflect the current crisis that is engulfing us. Indeed, as a capable and developmental state, the hallmark and attributes of such a state is the ability to respond in a time of crisis. And we have no doubt that indeed, given how we have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are on the right path. We need to commend indeed how the UIF has also responded in the manner in which it has responded, particularly in mitigating the devastating impact of the pandemic on the vulnerables. Chairperson, I will not go to the figures, but indeed it looks like our members on the right and the extreme left has forgotten that it was informed, we were informed that 34 billion rand has been disbursed and that 7.4 million payments has been made, and that indeed the government has adopted the follow the money approach. It looks like for deliberately they are forgetting the message that was put across by the department. Honorable Chair, as the department has indicated in terms of its new mandate, the focus of government intervention should be to save the existing jobs and also intervene strategically in the economy to create more jobs and grow South African economy. Part of the learning in this pandemic is to ensure that the building working relationship that we have forged in the battlefield with our social partners is indeed maintained. And indeed, learning from the East Asian tigers, the government continue to ensure that the relationship between capital and the working class, indeed, though contradictory, but those contradictions are non-antagonistic. When all of us are faced with the existential threat, we are better off working together than apart. Honorable Chairperson, we have also forged the working relationship and social compact through NETLEC. And also, we are saying that the Asian tigers were able to industrialize rapidly because the state played a direct interventionist role and decisive role in using both incentive and strong regulations to discipline with a heavy hand at times, both capital and labor to work towards national development goals. Honorable Chair, it is clear that the breaking of silo fashion of working in government that the president has spoken about must become a reality. And we have seen this through SASSA Social Development, the Department of Labor, indeed working together to mitigate the devastating impact of this pandemic on the poor. It is clear, Chairperson, that in South Africa, political parties like the Democratic Alliance have taken a leaf out of US President Donald Trump's book. They see every situation as a zero-sum game where there must be winners and losers. There is no doubt as to who the losers in their eyes should be. It is the working class. The DA's insistent abuse of the judiciary in order to pretend to be governing without the popular mandate from the electorate has become legendary. Bravo to the fact that they are losing all those cases. We call on government and public sector entities to procure personal protective equipment from the supported employment enterprise factories of the Department of Employment and Labor. The Department of Health and Basic Education in particular must lead by example. Honorable Chairperson, it is important also to note that the government will continue to lead social compacts to foster agreements on stabilizing the labor market as an important pillar of the economic recovery, with a particular focus on protecting the existing jobs. It looks like our members on the extreme left and the right forgot what was said when the question of fraud was raised in one of the committee meetings that we attended. When this question was posed to the minister, the response was as follows. He assured the committee that during the payment of COVID-19 benefits, the UIF had continued to pay just over 3 billion to over 500,000 South African ordinary beneficiaries during the lockdown period. Unemployment made up more than 80% of the benefits.
Less than
Honorable
1
Chair,
minute left of your time.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable members forgot that number of areas were identified as the guaranteeing tools against fraud. The ID as a confirmation system was raised. Two, in some instances where the UIF was claimed for dead people, this matter was identified. But other than that, also the reference numbers, Chair, was also used, particularly following the follow the money approach. As the ANC, we rise in support of the budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Muima. Honorable B. Malloy will close the debate. Deputy Minister.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. Allow me to end my speech, Honorable Chair, and concluding remarks with this courageous and comforting quote by Charles Darwin when he said, an open quote, "It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change," close quote. And as a department, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, we are responsive to change. Our theme for this budget is protecting workers and jobs in the era of COVID-19. We are doing our best under the circumstances with all we have to achieve this. We are doing more with little. Honorable members, something is happening in politics. Populism is taking over politics, and this is really worrying. And one thing is certain, though, what we do in times like these is bound to reflect back on us. It's just a matter of time. I want to assure honorable members that our people will remember this day. They will remember that this debate one day, posterity will be our judge. They will remember those who stood on their side during this time of the pandemic, and they will remember those that stood between them and this deadly virus. I'm convinced, Honorable Chairperson, that we are doing everything possible with all the interventions to protect the most vulnerable, the unorganized workers and the unemployed. And after all, we are a caring government in office. We do trust our policy interventions in this difficult period. Honorable Chairperson, I must also take this opportunity to appeal to our honorable members. I mean, Honorable Apleni, Honorable Boshoff, you mentioned, Honorable Apleni, the fact that we've got the number of inspectors that we have cannot go through to all the employers and check on their compliance. But we want to appeal to all of you, honorable members, that whatever the details that you have, Honorable Apleni, that you continue to collect from vulnerable people who come and complain to you, those share them with the department. Because for as long as you have those details, they will not be attended to. But share it with the department so that the department can refer those issues, those complaints to the relevant unit and the relevant entities, so that we can be able to give you feedback on those complaints. So please, those workers that we are unable to reach as a department, please refer them to us so that we can be able to. Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, opposing this budget means that we must ignore another achievement by this department that the minister this year launched the INPIFA hotline to assist the vulnerable workers to report underpayment. And now I'm worried that our honorable member, Honorable Bratese, who is from Western Cape, you cannot come here and complain about employers who underpay our employees. It cannot be. You are supposed, as an honorable member, you are supposed to be on the side of the people, that your employers must pay our people according to what the government has prescribed. It cannot be right. Now, you complain that as a department, we charge employers more than 3 times if we will continue to go after those who underpay their employees. Honorable Chair, and I must say that this budget brings about the recruitment of additional 500 occupational health and safety inspectors. And surely, Honorable Chair, as we have said even last week, that this process will be concluded end of this month. We have already appointed people who are their own training, and we will go for those employers who are not compliant. And this, I must say also, Honorable Chair, that it finds expression in most of the members' inputs. And this is how we are responding to as a department. We often hear about some tired call to deregulate labor markets, Honorable Chairperson, despite research which indicates that the South African labor market is not overregulated. And
less than a minute left.
Let me share with you, Honorable Chairperson, recently, we just have as a department 160 on the 17th of July, 160 seasonal workers were packed into a taxi. No screening, no risk assessment, no social distancing, no protective clothing. And we had to bring in the SAPS, we had to bring in Home Affairs because these people were brought in. It's like the DA wants to take us back, Honorable Chairperson. trampling on wages, labor standards, workers' rights, and employment equity in return to apartheid-style labor exploitation. That's why, Honorable Chairperson, as this department, we refuse. We are going to make sure that we clamp on all those who are not complying to all the labor laws of our country. We will go after them. We will make sure that we pounce on them and we will shut them down where possible if they don't comply, Honorable Chairperson. Our immediate mission is to protect the workers and jobs in the era of COVID-19, Chairperson. Allow me, Chairperson, in conclusion, to take this opportunity once more to thank you, Chair, for this opportunity, and also to pay my respects also and pay our condolences as a department and on behalf of myself and the Minister to our dearly departed Istaland Date and Rumlangeni. May his soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Thank you very much. The members would have noticed that the debate we have just had was a very good debate. And the context of COVID-19 was not lost. As we noted, indeed, as I say so in figures, that over 16 million people are now infected globally, that the South African figure is now closer to 500,000. So it is in this broader context that we say speedy recovery, and wish speedy recovery to the Minister Ngesi, and all South Africans who are in similar circumstances. Please allow me, on behalf of the NCOP, to express a word of appreciation to the Deputy Minister for participating in this important debate. The Deputy Minister may now remain or depart to attend to other urgent government business. We know that the ministers are indeed very, very busy doing all kinds of good work across South Africa. So, Minister, you're free to, Deputy Minister, you're free to depart or remain.
Honorable Chairperson, I choose to remain in support of the next budget vote. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Siamo.
I will now hand over to Honorable Nyambi.
Honorable.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you, Chief Whip. Let me take this opportunity to welcome Minister, special delegates, as we have done it, Chair. Without much ado, honorable delegates, we now proceed to the second order, policy debate on budget vote 36, business development adjustment appropriation bill. I will now call upon Honorable Nchaveni, the Minister of Small Business Development, to open the debate. Honorable Minister Nchaveni.
Honorable House Chair.
Honorable Minister. It's your turn, Honorable Minister. Yes.
Honorable House Chairperson, the Deputy Minister of Department of Employment and Labor, Honorable Pinky Muloi, the Chairperson of the Select Committee, Honorable Mandla Rai, Honorable Members, MECs for Economic Development amongst us, Honorable Thabo Mokoni from Limpopo, Honorable Musenochi Eginetsi from Northwest, Honorable Nomusa Dube-Ncube from KZN, and Honorable Voko from the Eastern Cape, the Acting Director General of the Department, Mr. Lindo Mkhumane, and ladies and gentlemen. Maybe let me from the onset express my best wishes to my colleagues, the Minister of Employment and Labor, Comrade Thulas Nxesi,
and the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, and all other South Africans who are recovering from the coronavirus infection. This era can best be described through the words of Charles Dickinson in The Tale of Two Cities, when he wrote, "It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way." Fellow South Africans, this aptly describes this era as the time of extreme opposites without any in-betweens. And the choice to come out on top is all within our means. Like the saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. In his address to the nation on the 21st of April, 2020, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa committed us not merely to return our economy to where it was before the coronavirus, but to forge a new economy in a new global reality. Our economic strategy going forward is to restructure the economy and achieve inclusive growth. Specific to the mandate for the Department of Small Business Development, the President has directed us to promote localization and industrialization, to strengthen the informal sector, and to forge a compact for radical economic transformation that advances the economic position of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And that makes our cities, towns, and villages and rural areas vibrant centers of economic activity, I quote. Honorable members, the budget vote we are debating today seeks to deliver on the clear directives from our state president. Our priorities are fivefold. First, we have reprioritized the implementation of the Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program. Second, our program to strengthen the informal businesses is based on dedicated scheme. Third, localization is focused on creating markets for South African SMMEs and cooperatives, produce products and services to drive industrialization through the targeted import substitution and supporting utilization of local skills and services in the infrastructure build program. Fourth, ensure business viability of enterprises, including cooperatives, by supporting re-entry and restructuring of small enterprises into the new normal and new operating models. And fifth, to drive precise transformation targets for women and youth empowerment, including race as ordered by the High Court. From the onset, we must acknowledge that our strategies for supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities are still yielding nothing to write home about. The budget vote for 2020-2021 financial year to deliver on these broad priorities is allocated as follows. We must point out that the Department of Small Business Development was initially allocated 2.4 billion for the 2020-2021 financial year, which was reduced during the special adjustment budget by 67 million to 2.3 billion. In that budget, transfers and subsidies consume 90.3% or 2.1 billion, whilst operations are provided at 9.7% or 227.7 million of the allocated resources. The 2.1 billion transfers and subsidies provided for CEDA allocation of 859.1 million, which is 40.7% of the transfers and subsidies. CIFA's allocation of 1.2 billion, which is 54.7% of the transfers and subsidies. The department administers the remaining 98.5 million through the incentives that are internally administered by the department, which include the cooperatives incentive schemes at 63.7 million, Black Business Supply Development Program at 13.7 million, Craft Customized Sector Program at 11.1 million, and National Informal Business Upliftment Scheme at 9.8 million. Honorable members, from CIFA's allocated total budget, an amount of 246 million does not form part of the budget vote 36 as yet. It is transferred through the budget vote of the DTIC, as CIFA is a subsidiary of the IDC. The department took a strategic decision to utilize the infrastructure and capacity of CIFA in implementing financial support interventions, hence the allocation of the 1.2 billion of our budget to them. We know they are not perfect, but we will work with them in ensuring that we achieve the intended outcomes. which is the provision of affordable finance to SMMEs and cooperatives. From the budget of 859.1 million allocated to CEDA, 160.3 million will go to the CEDA technology program. 16.2 million is allocated to the capacity building program for economic development, and 682.6 million is allocated to the agency to ensure that the entity has branches throughout the country that are supporting small enterprises and cooperatives to access non-financial and support services. From the 1.2 billion allocated to CIFA, the debt relief was given 144 million, the business growth 20 million, the Chisanyama and cooked food 50 million, Spaza shop support program 138.5 million, bakeries and confectionaries 100 million, auto body repairs and mechanics 225 million, personal care support 90 million, clothing, textile and leather 105 million, fruit and vegetable vendors 135 million, and small enterprise manufacturing program 150 million. You honorable members will notice that on terms of the SMME debt relief, it doesn't account for the full amount of the 530 million. It's also because we had a contribution from the DTIC in terms of topping up that scheme to make sure that it gets to 530 million. The Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program is part of the commitments we made in the 2019-2020 financial year when we tabled our maiden budget vote. And it was part of delivering on the undertakings of the state president to resuscitate the township economies. Last year, we committed ourselves to a dedicated program to transform and integrate opportunities in townships and rural areas into productive business ventures. I must indicate that Cabinet approved a 5-year program under this initiative, and our view is that opportunities created by the COVID-19 pandemic creates conducive environment for township and village enterprises to thrive when people are required to minimize traveling to avoid the transmission of the virus. Through this program, the department, in partnership with its 2 agencies, CIFA and CEDA, is implementing the following schemes: the auto body repairers and mechanics schemes, the bakeries and confectionery support scheme, the butchery support, Chisanyama and cooked food support. Through the auto body repairers and mechanics support scheme, we intend to support 15,000 motor mechanics, panel beaters, auto fitment centers, and auto spare shops in our townships and villages as follows: in the Eastern Cape, 2,055, in the Free State, 885, in Gauteng, 3,045, in KZN, 3,095, in Limpopo, 1,800, in Mpumalanga, 1,320, in the Northern Cape, 436, Northwest, 1,095, and in the Western Cape, 1,620. This work is to ensure that mechanics, panel beaters in townships and villages are assisted to qualify to service vehicles that are covered by insurance companies. In addition, these businesses are being assisted to ensure improved quality of service to their clients, whilst assisting them with improved business and financial management for the profitability of their businesses. In addition, last year, we commenced with discussions with the Minister of Police on the possibility of servicing SAPS vehicles through young motor mechanics, panel beaters, and fitment centers in the townships and villages. In this financial year, we should conclude the necessary agreements and thus provide a lucrative market for these entrepreneurs and boost our initiative to support 100,000 young entrepreneurs. We are already processing applications under the scheme. Last year, we implemented the Small Business and Innovation Fund, which was mainly targeting innovative youth entrepreneurs. And through this initiative, we were able to approve support to 2,372 enterprises to the tune of 409 million that managed to create or sustain 14,496 jobs. The department is also supporting bakeries and confectionaries with a target of 3,500 across the country. It must be noted that many of the bakeries in townships and villages are mostly owned by cooperatives, and our work is aimed at ensuring that the school feeding schemes, hospitals, and social development food parcels source their bread from these bakeries, as this will imply increasing government spending in businesses as part of boosting the township and village economy. Similarly, we are already processing applications under the scheme. Next week, the department will launch the scheme to support 10,000 butcheries that are based in the townships and villages. This scheme is linked with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and the provincial departments responsible for agriculture to ensure that both the smallholder farmers, subsistence farmers, and feedlots become suppliers to the beneficiaries of the scheme. Of this target, Eastern Cape will be supported through 1,370 butcheries, Free State 590, Gauteng 2,030, KZN 1,990, Limpopo 1,200, Mpumalanga 880, Northern Cape 290, Northwest 730, and Western Cape 1,080. Similarly, next week, the department will launch the support scheme for personal care services, although it will be limited to support those in the hair and beauty care services, including hairdressers, nail technicians, makeup artists, and body massages. This will support those who operate from their homes, salons or spas, including those who rent chairs in other people's salons and those in mobile services. Our target is 5,000 enterprises in the personal care in a sector. Through this scheme, we will also create a market for the hair and beauty products manufactured by SMMEs and cooperatives to be sold to participants of the scheme as part of ensuring that the rand circulates more within the SMME sector. Honorable members, the Informal Business Initiative is part of those programs we announced in the 2019-2020 financial year, through which we committed to support informal businesses with compliance, business skills development, business infrastructure, and technical support. We are honored to report that the progress made since our last announcement, and that the COVID-19 pandemic has propelled its implementation through dedicated and focused schemes such as the Spaza Shop and General Dealer Support Scheme, the Fruit and Vegetable Vendor Support, Chisanyama and Cooked Food Support. The Spaza Shop Support Scheme seeks to support 25,000 spazas and general dealers with a budget of 175 million, and the department has already been processing more than 9,000 applications. This program provides spaza shops and general dealers with the bulk buying facilities through accredited wholesalers, whilst assisting owners to access the mostly elusive bank credit via commercial banks. I must, in the onset, appreciate the support and participation of Nedbank and Standard Bank in this scheme. We are also honored to report that not in the not so distant future, these spaza shops and general dealers will become stores where SASSA grants can be redeemed, and hopefully also the beneficiaries of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme can also purchase their necessities. Our commitment is to make spaza shops and general dealers in our townships and villages the convenient shopping facilities of choice. I must also indicate to the honorable members that the scheme has enabled the department to ensure that more than 40 products manufactured by SMMEs and cooperatives, including Magwa tea from the Eastern Cape and Midi tea from Limpopo, amongst others, are listed in participating wholesalers. The spaza shops and general dealers are disaggregated as follows: Eastern Cape 3,200, Free State 1,480, Gauteng 5,370, KZN 5,000, Limpopo 2,619, Mpumalanga 2,110, Northern Cape 840, Northwest 1,840, and Western Cape 2,470. The department will next week launch the Chisanyama and Cooked Food Support that targets to support 10,000 outlets who can be Chisanyamas, micro restaurants, including those who cook and sell in the open, popularly known as Boma Makura in Limpopo, the Kasi-style takeaways, including the ones who make kota or spatlo in our streets. For us, streets are economic spaces that from time immemorial, our people have eked a living, and we are committed to make those businesses sustainable, whilst improving the environmental health and food safety conditions under which they operate. We will also launch the Fruit and Vegetable Vendor Support, through which 40,000 vendors are targeted beneficiaries, and similarly, the scheme will create market for smallholder and subsistence crop and fruit farmers. The partnership that I mentioned with the bank will go along with the banks will go a long way in ensuring that the previously excluded entrepreneurs from bank and formal credit system are able to access bank credit in future, as their government has created a path for them to build a credit profile without the burden of lack of security. The COVID-19 pandemic has also assisted us to fast-track the implementation of the SMME database, now known as the SMME SA platform, which is found on smmesa.gov.za, which we announced last year. In addition to being used by SMMEs, including informal and micro businesses, to apply for support online, the platform is also assisting us to improve traceability of support provided to SMMEs and cooperatives. SMME SA is an interactive tool that will also assist us in curbing double dipping whilst positioning us to introduce the trade exchange for SMMEs in the e-commerce field to latch on as part of deepening online trading. The same database has been linked with SARS, CIPC, and you are in the process of linking it with other organizations, which include the UIF and the Central Supply Database. This database, once completed, will also serve as a one-stop platform. To date, over 200,000 SMMEs across all sectors of the economy have registered and used the platform. We are indebted to the continued support from the European Union on the work we continue to do on the platform, including the next phase of linking SMME SAs to the global value chains through the EU platform, the International Trade Center, and we should also be able to link to the Africa Medical Supplies platform that is spearheaded by our president in his capacity as chairperson of the AU. Our localization program builds on SMME products initiative that we announced last year and the commitment His Excellency the State President made that we shall designate 1,000 products and services for SMMEs and cooperatives to manufacture and perform, with at least 250 of those aimed at government consumption. As already indicated, we've commenced with the identification of these products and services, including those we are actively supporting to list with wholesalers for both the spaza shop and personal care markets. And in addition, we are confident of the engagements we are having with the sister departments, with the SAPS, defense and military veterans, employment and labor, higher education and science and innovation, in terms of creating either the necessary markets for products and services for SMMEs and cooperatives, or the funding and training partnerships which has enabled some of these implementations of the localization initiatives. We are also committed to ensure that South Africans become conscious consumers of products, whether they be clothing we wear, toilet papers we use to relieve ourselves, the food we eat, and we are confident that soon we shall all proudly consume predominantly that which is made in South Africa. Our clothing, textile, and leather support scheme and the broader manufacturing support schemes are focused on creating not only a productive economy, but anchor economic recovery of South Africa. We're working with some major retailers. We have identified a number of products that are already being imported, which can be manufactured locally as part of the import replacement strategy, which is even acknowledged as a way to go by big business. We believe we have the skills and capacity to empower our small businesses to produce the right quality and quantity, and we have lined up those institutions that will help SMMEs and cooperatives in this regard. Honorable members, we continue to fund these activities through the blended finance program that we announced last year. Last year, I committed before this House that we will start utilizing blended finance model to support our small businesses, especially those that can create 10 or more jobs. I'm glad to announce that even though we started in the middle of the financial year, we were able to approve 48 enterprises to the tune of 292 million in the process of creating or maintaining 1,873 jobs. We continue to implement the blended finance model in supporting the initiatives that we embarked on, even in our informal interventions, where, for example, we provided a combination of grant and credits or supply guarantee scheme. We'll continue with this program as it is very critical in strengthening SMMEs and cooperatives capital structures, increasing their chances of sustainability. Honorable House Chair, it is worth noting that small businesses are the biggest casualty of both the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the announcement of the lockdown in particular, our department has been inundated with an unprecedented number of calls from the informal, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as cooperatives seeking financial and non-financial support. In response to the plight, the following instruments were implemented to assist, albeit the budget was completely unproportional and unmatched to the demand at hand. For the SMME debt relief, we mobilized 530 million rands. This was a soft loan funding aimed at keeping existing businesses afloat during the COVID-19 pandemic, whilst averting loss of jobs in the economy. This facility is assisting the majority of SMMEs and cooperatives who were experiencing severe reduction in demand and subsequent reduction in revenues due to the pandemic. Due to budgetary constraints, the facility offered working capital only, strictly direct costs, which should be auditable to a maximum of 350,000. Those that apply were assisted with utility bills, rental payments, and some with salaries. And this was just before we could finalize our agreement with the UIF to assist those that needed payroll assistance. And we owe this to the support of the Minister and the Deputy Minister for Employment and Labor, who listened to us and allowed the UIF to concede the participation of some SMMEs who were not also contributing to the UIF as long as they acknowledge their debts. We have committed to pay all claims that are with us by the end of this month, which is July, as we have to start implementing measures that will drive economic recovery. We were able to assist only 1,497 enterprises, and thus preserving 21,421 jobs. Honorable delegates, COVID-19 has changed the way we do business, and therefore, as a department, we have to support SMMEs and cooperatives to move to a new normal. We are launching a scheme called Business Viability Program, which is aimed at supporting SMMEs to overcome both financial and non-financial constraints that are negatively affecting their business activities. The primary purpose of the program is to ensure that SMMEs and cooperatives are commercially and financially viable and contribute meaningfully to economic transformation and job creation. Some of the interventions will include business turnaround interventions, and we are willing to also dabble into the business rescue mechanisms as it will be required. Honorable members, it must be noted that liquidity challenges of SMMEs due to late
Use
payments
your 1 minute to conclude, Minister.
were exacerbated with the lockdown. Having a dedicated team working to design interventions that will most effectively support the payment of SMMEs has been critical. On our part, we must extend our appreciation to the CEO initiative and the Business for South Africa, who led an initiative for private sector to pay SMMEs. It must be noted that if government and private sector had paid SMMEs on time, majority of the claims that we had or demand or request for assistance that we had during this period would have been delayed, as SMMEs would have been able to pay for themselves. Another issue that remains a challenge and we are committed to resolve is the matter of the dispute resolution. We are committed to fast track the tabling of the SMME Ombuds Bill to make sure that SMMEs do not have to go to court to resolve disputes either with government or big business. Honorable Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next, thank you. I now invite Honorable Hai, who's the chairperson of the Select Committee on Economic and Business Development. Honorable Hai.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. On the 15th of March 2020, the President declared the national state of disaster to, amongst other things, mobilize the resources of the country, both human and material resources, to fight the pandemic and save lives. The coronavirus pandemic has disrupted the socio-economic activities the world over. We appreciate the many initiatives and intervention by government to respond to the COVID-19 and the lockdown. We agree with the government that at the center of our response to the COVID-19 must be the issue of saving lives of our people. On the economic outlook, the forecast is that the global economy will contract by 5.2% in 2020. This global contraction will inevitably impact on the domestic economies of countries around the world, South Africa included. The South African economy is also expected to contract by 7.2% this financial year, the largest contraction in nearly 90 years, as the Minister of Finance said. The country's growth and jobs objectives would require growth and expansion of small enterprises, including cooperatives. Further, both domestic and international investment will be highly needed to avert the current economic and health crisis exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. For the country to attract investment, it should build solid investment environment to ease of doing business and improve production capacity and capability. Both public and private sector financing to SMMEs should be a top priority in order to reset the economy. We welcome the government's intervention, including private sector measures adopted to support SMMEs. The Reserve Bank's reduced repurchase rate to 3.75% will provide relief to indebted households and businesses. Banks have provided 30 billion supporting customers to ease the impact of COVID-19. In addition, the government has undertaken to spend 500 billion rand fiscal relief package to provide significant support to households and businesses. We recognize many challenges faced by SMMEs and cooperatives, such as lack of access to finance, managerial skills, inadequate infrastructure support, and regulatory burden. The COVID-19 has weakened deeper the SMMEs. Hence, we emphasize that government, in partnership with the development finance institution, including other financial institutions such as commercial bank, should focus on saving existing productive and commercial capabilities of SMMEs and cooperatives, including saving current jobs. We further recognize the depth of the crisis presented by COVID-19 pandemic in relation to the operation of SMMEs and the deeper problem of the unemployment that will have to be tackled. We also emphasize that preservation of jobs and support to many businesses should be at the center of government agenda. We have noted in the 2020-21 main budget report that the strategic plan and spending plans of department will need to be revised to accommodate the policy response to COVID-19 pandemic. Further, we recognize that the COVID-19 had an effect on the departmental spending plans priorities. According to the 2020-21 supplementary budget review, the overall adjustment to the spending plans of government department was guided by 1, removing funds underspent due to delays caused by the lockdown from the baselines of affected departments, suspending allocation for capital and other departmental projects that could be delayed or rescheduled to 2021-22 or later, suspending allocation to programs with a history of poor performance and slow spending, redirecting funds towards the COVID-19 response within functions or towards government fiscal relief package. Over the medium-term period, a significant feature of the spending plans would respond more appropriately to COVID-19 interventions, given its enormous impact on SMMEs and cooperatives. Growth needs to be inclusive. So over the medium-term government is set to also focus on channeling resources to lift rural and township economies. This is one of the policy areas that as a committee will focus on over the medium term. Honorable House Chair, the supplementary adjustment budget tabled by the Minister of Finance has resulted in the suspension of 67 million rand in funds initially appropriated to the Department of Small Business Development. In the 2020 main budget, the department was approximately appropriated 2.4 billion rands. However, the department, as a policy response to COVID-19, has established COVID-19 Emergency Fund with the aim to support SMMEs. The fund is administered by the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, SEFA. In the supplementary budget, the COVID-19 emergency fund anticipated to disburse approximately 1.15 billion rands to small enterprises to minimize the impact of the COVID-19 to business operations. The aim of the department is to promote the development of small businesses that contribute towards an all-inclusive economic development and growth. Further, it is stated that the department is tasked with the responsibility of leading an integrated approach to the promotion and development of small business and cooperatives by focusing on economic and legislative drivers that stimulate entrepreneurship to contribute towards radical economic transformation. It is expected that the realization of this mandate will lead to the increased employment, poverty reduction, and reduced inequality. The co-functional policy priorities of the department are constituted around crucial policy functional areas, namely Program 2, which is sector policy and research, Program 3, integrated cooperative development, Program 1, which is administration, which is a primary providing overall coordinated administrative support to enable the three functional policy areas to realize their legislative and policy functional requirements. As a result of changes necessitated by the COVID-19, the department revised the spending plan's priorities to meet the new demand. The spending priorities are framed as follows: develop and introduce COVID-19 pandemic outbreak intervention measures dedicated towards assisting informal and micro businesses. Finalize and implement township entrepreneurship fund. Support government effort to ease business environment to SMMEs and cooperatives to operate, and further promote sustainability and growth of SMMEs and cooperatives by designing and implementing business viability facility. Finalize amendments to the National Small Enterprise Act to deal mainly with the establishment of the SME Ombuds Office, as the minister has said. Regulation, licensing businesses owned by foreign nationals, and unfair business practices. Finalize and implement the localization program on SMMEs and cooperatives. Sustain SMMEs and cooperatives by linking them to markets through e-commerce platform. Realign the budget structure with overall organizational structure and planning. Finance the business case for the new single small business support entity that will involve a merger of Small Enterprise Development Agency, SEDA, Small Enterprise Finance Agency, SIFA, and the National Empowerment Fund, NEF. As I have said earlier, in the current financial year, the department, as part of the government-wide downward revision exercise on spending plan priorities, is expected to forego 67 million rand. Program 1, which is administration, is expected to forego 6.4 million rands. The policy area in relation to sector policy and research is anticipated to forego 8.1 million rands. In the current financial year, the department will develop the localization program on SMMEs and cooperatives to support growth and development of SMMEs and cooperatives. With regard to the functional policy program 3, integrated cooperative development, the department is expected to forego 30 million rands. The funds were initially budgeted to be allocated as part of cooperative incentive scheme directed to private institutions. In relation with the policy on enterprise development and entrepreneurship, the department is expected to forego 22.5 million. However, the department was reallocated 1.1 billion as a policy response to COVID-19 pandemic. As already stated, the 1.15 billion rand originated funds will be used to support small enterprises. The funds contribute to the government's effort to saving existing productive and commercial capabilities of SMMEs and cooperatives, including saving the current jobs. In partnership with the entities, SIDA and CIFA, the department implements the policy response to COVID-19, the SMME Debt Relief Fund, and other measures to support SMMEs to navigate the current uncertain situation. Further, CIFA has also offered payment holidays to its clients amounting to 170.6 million. The intervention also covered township and rural enterprises. The department is working on post-lockdown intervention to ensure that businesses are assisted to upgrade their business processes and get appropriate financial support to operate in a new normal operating environment. Over a 5-year
As you
period,
conclude,
over a 5-year period, Honorable House Chair, the department through CIFA is expected to disperse approximately 9.7 billion SMME cooperative. Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair.
thank you, Honorable Khai. The next speaker is Honorable
Malibongwe.
Thank you, House Chairperson.
Lund.
Thank you, House Chairperson, Honorable Minister, honorable members. Honorable Minister, quite often when we take up a role of opposition, we think of what it is we can say or do in committees, in plenaries, even show you that can help government take a better road. Most of us are blessed with our senses. Basic senses like sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch is there for each of us to help us navigate through our worlds and through life. It is therefore heartbreaking to realize that even though you are blessed with all your senses, you do not see and hear the despair of South Africans, and in particular, those that you are entrusted to help the SMMEs to survive, flourish, and contribute to our successes as a country. Honorable Minister, your own department doesn't live up to what is expected. Basic expectations like meeting your own targets, they are not met. With the department only just breaching the 60% mark last year, you complain that government spent 15 billion on SMMEs and that you only receive 10% of that. Yet the little that you get, you cannot even run well. How on earth do you want to get more? The worst performing national departments in paying small businesses are Department of Water and Sanitation, Correctional Services, and Department of Defense. But you know this. You pay lip service to improving the payment rate, yet no improvement is seen. It is your responsibility to the industry you are appointed to protect, to call for the heads of your cabinet colleagues. But that goes against the ANC ethos of party first before the vulnerable in the country. Nothing illustrates this more than your ability, or rather your inability, to make life easier for SMMEs. My colleague Henry Kruger flagged this last week, but it's worth repeating. South Africa has one of the highest failure rates for startups and entrepreneurs, due in part to the stranglehold that the regulatory burdens and red tape have on entrepreneurs and small businesses. Small businesses continue to struggle to operate in a highly inflexible and rigid regulatory environment. This is not such a difficult thing to understand, Honourable Minister. Any normal thinking human being would work to address this. But what happens in South Africa under your watch? The department introduces even more red tape, with the application process for small businesses to apply for COVID-19 relief from the government. The Department of Labour is still struggling to pay auteurs, and sole proprietors are hanging in the air because the Department of Trade and Industry don't have a plan to accommodate them in their system. What are you doing to help address this and help support small businesses that suffer because of this? Honourable Minister, even by removing the rhetoric, the NCOP did request the same, and I will highlight two key requests from our Select Committee report. First, for the country to attract investment, it should build a solid investment environment to ease of doing business and improving production capacity and capability. Both public and private sector financing to SMMEs should be a top priority in order to reset the economy. The committee also emphasized that the preservation of jobs and support to many businesses should be at the center of government agenda. Currently, we are failing SMMEs in South Africa. SMMEs are folding by the day, and every single person who benefited directly or indirectly through these businesses, including extended families and dependents, are nervous and face the very real risk of losing much, much more than just their incomes. Honorable Minister, there is none so blind as those who refuse to see. There's none so deaf as those who refuse to hear. And there's none so heartless as those who continue to steal and loot with impunity from the very people they are supposed to help. We are in a crisis not just brought on by COVID-19, but a crisis brought on entirely by the ANC and the feeding frenzy of those on the inside, rushing to enrich themselves, their husband, their wives, their children, the side chicks, whoever is close to them. You started off with a quote by Charles Dickinson, and I'm going to give you another quote back. Suffering has been greater than all other teachings. I've been bent and broken, but I hope into a better shape. Since this government has now suspended teaching through schools, and they're pushing South Africans further and further into suffering, I hope maybe that is what you're trying to teach us to come out of this stronger. We don't really expect you to listen to the cry of the millions without job opportunities, nor the thousands of businesses that could have helped them become gainfully employed. We also don't expect you to see the despair, the anger, the hopelessness that is moving through our society at an increasing rate. Because now we hope and pray that you mend your ways. Because the one sense that would have still helped us, but the one sense that is sorely missing in the ANC government is common sense. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Lund. The next speaker is the Eastern Cape MEC for Finance, Honorable Mvoko.
Yes, MEC. The list. Okay.
MEC Mvoko.
House Chair, I propose that you move to the next
Are you
speaker.
ready? Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Chief Whip Mohai. Under your guidance, the next speaker will be Honorable Matevula. Honorable Matevula, are you ready?
Yes, House Chair. Can you hear me?
You can continue. Yes, I can hear you. You can continue.
Like some Mthamashtul. The Economic Freedom Fighters reject the adjustment budget vote of the Department of Small Business Development. We reject the budget adjustment not because we don't want small business to receive COVID-19 relief fund, but on the principle that the adjustments have been made to the budget are based on the idea of budget cuts. To agree with the budget adjustment will be to agree with austerities. The reality is that the majority of small business in townships and rural areas could not get COVID-19 relief fund because the government has never fully developed a plan that takes into consideration the role of rural and township economies. Small business and cooperatives play a significant role in country economic growth, job creation, and poverty reduction. Yet many cooperatives in the rural areas and townships of the country are underperforming due to the lack of training and development and opportunity to trade with big businesses, the state, as well as access to prospect for the import and export of their goods. Small business from rural areas and township communities, as well as cooperatives that are run by the youth, women, and persons with disabilities are the most vulnerable to failure due to the lack of training, support, and sustainable intervention that could ensure their success. One practical example is the art and craft cooperative in Muyeshe village in Mopani in Greater Guyana municipalities. It is a fact that we don't have small business in South Africa. We just have white-owned business that remains small even after apartheid and play a role in upstream and downstream activities of major business in finance, mining, manufacturing, agriculture, hospitality. Our people remain excluded in township and rural areas without access of machinery, shelf space in big malls, loans, and funding. It cannot be that in South Africa, the only people worthy of conducting business with big business at the state are family members of corrupt politicians. It is not, nor will it ever be sustainable to the country of beggars and borrowers who, despite the ability to be self-sustainable and eradicate poverty. We have a government that opts to put the needs of its cadres first and citizens at last. It cannot be that only citizens in South Africa who are worthy of creating a livelihood for themselves and their communities, thereby securing the future of generations to come, are white South Africans only. Another reason why we reject the adjustment budget is that the ruling party has failed ideologically to develop an industrial policy that fully understands township and rural economy. We don't even know how many people live and do business in township and rural areas. How are we going to intervene? The EFF believes that not enough has been done by the department to establish with certainty the true state of affairs in small business development, with the intention of implementing practical and sustainable educational, monetary, and technical intervention to support the sector. For many of our people, small businesses, especially in the informal sector, do not have savings. It is a business of selling and feeding their families on a daily basis. Yet the government imposed lockdown level 5 without a proper system in place to assist our people in small business in a meaningful way in order for them to continue feeding their families. Since the beginning of lockdown, our people have come to us with a proof that you rejected their relief application fund without even contacting them, seeking further details or giving them an explanation of why you rejected them. One practical example is the DRC County Estate in Ward 6 in Greater Guyana municipality. There are many other small businesses that have suffered the same fate. Other small business in township and rural areas did not even know where to go or how to apply for COVID-19 relief funds. To build small business, we first need an industrial policy that prioritizes manufacturing and beneficiation of our own mineral resources with a clear understanding of both rural and township economies. Small business have been some of the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it is our firm belief that they never stood a chance to weather storm, considering the lack of political will from government to invest in the sector. Without a show-up of substantive change in small business development, the EFF cannot support the authority budget for the department. Thank you, Chairperson.
Ndakenza Honorable Matebula. The next speaker is Honorable Mfaela.
Yes, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the COVID-19 pandemic undeniably had a devastating impact on the livelihood of small, medium, and macro-sized enterprise SMEs. According to TransUnion, 9 in 10 small businesses in South Africa are struggling or are temporarily closed due to COVID-19. We have to remind ourselves that SMEs form the bread and butter of our economy and is vital for job creation. Globally, over 95% of enterprises are SMEs, and they employ 90 to 70% of working population. Likewise, in South Africa, SMEs provide ideal opportunities to address our high unemployment rate, and we have to ensure that we provide every form of support to this vital sector. Honorable members, the IFP is generally support the Department of Small Business Development supplementary budget, but we remain very concerned about the impact of the downward revision of vital programs of department. We are specifically concerned about the impact of the reprioritization of funds for the Township Entrepreneurship Fund, which originally had 800 million allocated to it for current financial year. These funds have now been reprioritized for COVID-19 intervention, and the Township Entrepreneurship Fund has been suspended. It is critical that in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, we do not forget the need to uplift the support and support these township enterprises. In conclusion, Chairperson, honorable members, the IFP wishes to stress the importance of ensuring accountability and transparency in the administration of COVID-19 relief funds. We now, more than ever, we cannot afford any waste of resources, as this sector desperately needs every means of support to survive the pandemic. We urge the department to ensure effective and transparent oversight of these COVID-19 funds, and the IFP will closely monitor the department performance. I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Mfaela. The next speaker is Honorable Miemang. Honorable Miemang.
House Chair, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the African National Congress to pledge support to small business development adjusted budget for vote 36. Honorable Chair, the Minister of Finance in tabling the adjusted budget said that COVID-19 pandemic has turned the global economy upside down. Indeed, the exact shape of the post-coronavirus South African political economy is impossible to predict. However, it is feasible to identify certain elements that could emerge at a national level based on some of the clear shortcomings and vulnerabilities that the pandemic has revealed and exacerbated. First and foremost, it is assumed here that the crisis will lead to a larger role for the state in the economy. And indeed, as a country, South Africa is also not immune from the socio-economic disruptions which have been visited upon us by the COVID-19 global pandemic. The ANC, in its response to the COVID-19 economic crisis, assess, Honorable House Chair, that South Africa continues to have an economy with two vastly different lived experiences, one poor and mainly black, and one rich and mainly white. And the COVID-19 crisis has brought this to the fore. Indeed, in his 21st April address to the nation, the President stated that government is resolved not merely to return our economy to where it was before the coronavirus, but to forge a new economy in a new global reality. This requires bold, forthright, and determined thinking and action to stabilize debt, increase the efficiency and composition of public spending and unlock economic growth through reforms. Indeed, the economic situation of South Africa is further compounded by the slow economic growth, the credit ratings. What is critical, House Chair, is that as a response to these socio-economic challenges facing our country, the President has announced various measures aimed at stimulating economic growth as part of our bold action. These measures are part of the 500 billion announced by the President, which include the 200 billion loan guarantee scheme in partnership with major banks, the Treasury and South African Reserve Bank. The other 30 billion will come from the reprioritize of the current budget. These measures, House Chair, are highly appreciated, and we are under no illusion that they will address all the problems we are facing as a country. As a strong social compact with the society and the private sector, especially private finance institution, it will go a long way in reviving our economy. Honorable House Chair, as the ANC, you have also said that the invigoration of small and micro enterprise and corporations to reduce the dependency of the poor on government handouts and public employment programs must be prioritized. These measures, the small and medium micro enterprise and cooperatives will be able to play a critical role as being the means through which families derive their income. Therefore, House Chair, the contraction of the SMMEs and cooperatives will expose many households to poverty. Indeed, House Chair, the COVID-19 pandemic and the nationwide lockdown has exposed some of the challenges facing small business and cooperatives. Amongst these challenges are that most SMMEs have not registered their businesses and that their employees are not registered on their unemployment insurance fund. Indeed, we take appreciation from the collaborative effort between the Department of Small Business and the Department of Employment and Labor to address this challenge. To add to this, the challenge of access to infrastructure by SMMEs, especially ICT, has also been exposed. Most SMMEs are unable to trade online through e-commerce. The well-established business were able to take advantage of the online sale during lockdown. Honorable House Chair, common sense will not work and it will not govern. It can only probably just govern in Western Cape. At this stage, an emphasis of what as the ANC we have committed ourselves to do in the 2019 election manifesto may be necessary. We have said in the manifesto that we will drive innovation and the digital revolution, increase level of investment in the economy, accelerate the provision of infrastructure to support economy and meet basic needs, transform and diversify the financial sector. Consistent with this manifesto commitments and not common sense, the Department of Small Business Development have developed various measures in the short to medium term. First, to respond to the disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and their impact on the small business and cooperatives. Secondly, as a way to further support small business and cooperatives moving forward. These measures, House Chair, include the establishment and implementation of the Township Entrepreneur Fund, which will support small business in the township and rural areas, and thus add to drive to decentralize the economic activities from traditional urban centers. For example, House Chair, 35,000 SMEs Debt Relief Fund applications was received, with 14,551 which were complete. And this is 40% of the total applications. And 21,414 were incomplete, which is 60%, which was referred to CEDA for assistance. Most of the applications were received from Gauteng, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape Province, and the Northern Cape. From the 1,501 approved applications, House Chair, 21,580 jobs were maintained, with a total of 530 million being invested. The Gauteng province was able to keep and maintain 529 enterprise and 7,460 jobs were saved. KwaZulu-Natal, 270 enterprise saved and 4,596 jobs were saved. Western Cape, 199 enterprise were finalized and 3,888 jobs were saved. And the Northern Cape, 39 enterprise were finalized and 359 jobs were saved. House Chair, as we indicated earlier, the lack of access to e-commerce by SMEs and cooperatives is a matter that needs urgent attention. Through the incubation centers, digital hubs in townships and rural areas, small business will be able to enjoy the opportunities of e-commerce. This includes support to youth business startups. In line with the district developmental model, the department will improve coherency, efficiency, and effectiveness in the implementation of the program to support SMEs and cooperatives. As parliamentarians, House Chair, representing the interest of our province in the NCOP, we will ensure through our oversight role that the intervention measures outlined by the department are fully implemented to transform our economy, grow the economy, and create jobs. As the ANC, we support the budget. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Miamang. The next, thank you. The next speaker is the Limpopo MEC for Economic Development, Environment and Tourism, Honorable Mokone. MEC Mokone.
Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister Kumbuzo Nchaveni, my sister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable members of the National Council of Provinces, invited participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a privilege for me to participate in this National Council of Provinces virtual debate of the Department of Small Business Development. We are meeting here today at a time when our lives have been disrupted by COVID-19. Many people have succumbed to the virus and many others are sick. The livelihoods of our people have been put under tremendous strain. A number of businesses have abruptly ceased to exist. Thousands of people have lost their income and many are not certain of their future. Society is living in anxiety and fear every day of our lives, of their life. Since the President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, declared the state of disaster in March 2020, both national and provincial government have come up with relief programs to mitigate the devastating effects of the pandemic. We want to thank the President, the National Command Council, and Provincial Command Council for providing guidance on procedures and protocols in order to save lives and livelihoods of our people amidst this health and economic crisis. We must add that most SMEs were negatively affected by COVID-19 lockdown regulations, which resulted in a slowdown of the economy and exacerbated the challenges faced by the SMEs in relation to their survival during and beyond the lockdown. The economic slowdown will inevitably have a negative effect on a public and private funding, the impact of which will cascade into job losses, business collapsing, and severe economic hardship being faced by the vulnerable communities, particularly women, youth, rural communities, and people living with disabilities. We appreciate the set aside by the Department of Small Business Development for SMEs, cooperative hazards of relief against the effect of COVID-19. We have no doubt, Chairperson, that if the Minister and the National Government would not have released the relief fund, South Africa would have been a different place, with a serious job bloodbath and closure of industries. In Limpopo, most enterprises applied for the COVID-19 SME relief fund offered by the Department of Business Development. Only 109 out of 1,197 were granted as of 10 July 2020. Disbursements are yet to be made to their respective countries. This is according to the report of Department of Small Business Development report 10 July 2020. From the Spaza Shops and General Dealer Support Program, 607 businesses were granted approvals of total of 2,190. Provincial allocation and disbursement amounting to 1,540,000 has been effected according to the report of Department of Small on the 10th July 2020. Limpopo Economic Development, Environment and Tourism has supported 22 women-owned enterprises as well as 25 enterprises owned by people with disabilities through the provision of working tools and equipment. Furthermore, the provincial government has set 20 million to support SMEs and cooperatives in various sectors. The province has collaborated with the National Empowerment Fund, who will assist disburse 10 million on the set amount in support of the enterprises. In addition, as part of the mandate to support SMEs, the Limpopo Economic Development has budgeted 50 million for the financial year 2020 to support cooperative and SMEs to financial and non-financial support. We appreciate the opportunity and partnership that we have with the Department of Small Business Development under the leadership of Minister Kumbuzon Chabe, wherein the department entrusted the Limpopo provincial government with the opportunity to operate the National Call Center for the relief program. Our agency, Limpopo Economic Development Agency, has set up a call center from the 7th April that assisted 14,895 SMEs and cooperatives across the length and breadth of South Africa. We cherish this experience and partnership, and we will leverage on it as we seek to operationalize our own fully fledged call center that will assist entrepreneurs and citizens beyond the COVID-19 lockdown. Over the years, we have experienced the success of SMEs and cooperatives is positively significant, correlated with financial and non-financial support from both private and public sector. Despite availability of array of funding programs, the awareness of these programs and the uptake has been very low, especially for government-supported schemes. We believe that working together with the Department of Small Business Development and other like-minded partners, we will be able to establish a sustainable and effective support system for SMEs and cooperatives to thrive. We are currently finalizing the Limpopo Provincial Socio-Economic Recovery Plan in consultation with stakeholders as a further measure to help build the economy of our province during and post the pandemic. Indeed, the road to recovery will be cumbersome and difficult, but working together with the Minister, Mayor Kumbuzon Chabe, and other ministers, we can help to bring sanity to the ailing economy. We also want to support the budget as read by the Minister Kumbuzo Sales Chabe, Akensa, Rolebu, Realebu, Pula.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, MEC.
Yebo, Mokone.
Mokone. Thank you, MEC Mokone. As I call the next speaker, that is Honorable Boshoff, I'm also inviting the Deputy Chair, Mama, to continue with the session to its logical conclusion. Honorable Poshoff and the Deputy Chair, Mayor Lucas.
Sure, Baba. Honourable members, fellow South Africans. May I continue, Chair?
Yes, you can continue.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister, as you and many South Africans are aware, SMMEs are the lifeblood of our economy. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has and is still causing untold human suffering across South Africa and is more than likely to leave an indelible impact on the SMMEs, the country's economy and the unemployment rate. Minister, I, together with many South Africans, are very, very worried and concerned about this sector, and so should you be, as they, prior to COVID-19, were already contending with a contracting economy, downgrades, and are now facing another hurdle in the road with the draconian lockdown measures, which have caused revenues to fall with a huge bang, being forced to cut back on business spending, retrenching staff, closing down of businesses, or asking their employees to work half day for half a salary.
All the honorable members, can you please put off all your communication devices?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Minister, according to reports by analysts, we could see as many as 60% of SMMEs closing doors before this crisis is over. Most employees that have been retrenched have no other income source and together with their families now form part of the unemployed statistics. Minister, these employers and employees alike all have commitments they need to honor, but alas, this cannot be done. This leads to a ripple effect in the economy as everyone down the line will be affected. It is common knowledge, Minister, that most of the funding platforms that are available require these businesses to be registered, tax compliant, and UIF compliant, with further requirements such as the provision of 6 months bank statements and financial projections being made available. Many businesses who wish to apply for funding do not know where to find this assistance, and funding requirements are often ambiguous. Foreign-owned businesses are left completely to their own devices as there is no available funding whatsoever for them. These businesses, Honourable Minister, employ South Africans who have now been left high and dry. This leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. Minister, the City of Cape Town has recently been contacting informal traders via SMS who are registered with the city's database, have COVID-19 permits and concession letters to offer them the opportunity to receive a COVID-19 informal traders toolkit. This, Minister, is what I call proactive, and all other provinces should follow suit. The distress of our business owners, owners of tourism-related businesses, bakers, spaza shop owners, to name but a few, are all so heart-wrenching. We hear the same story repeatedly, and there is nothing that I or anyone in my party at this point can do to assist. Only you, Minister, and your government hold the key to turning this sector around. The knock-on effect of the incapable state with reference to SMMEs is crystal clear and cannot be denied by you, as many people have been left vulnerable and destitute. Lives and livelihoods are at stake, Minister, and you and your government must stop destroying the South African workforce. Show some empathy and open the sector up completely. Go out and ask South Africans to buy, trade, and produce locally. You need to assist this sector, who in turn will assist in the growth of the economy and enable them to fend for themselves and their extended families. I thank you.
I'm sorry, but this meeting. Thank you, Honorable Boshoff. Honorable SF Dutoy.
Dankie, agbare adjunkvoorsitter. The Department of Small Business and Development has failed in its mandate. The purpose of this department is to promote the development of small businesses and cooperatives that contribute to the inclusive economic growth and job creation. How is it possible that the minister and government can allow the budget of this department to be adjusted downward when they knew pre-COVID that South Africa was entering a recession and that South Africa's economy was pushed deeper into contraction in the first quarter of this year, even before the full force of the corona pandemic hit the African continent's most industrialized economy? South Africa fell victim to one of the world's longest and strictest lockdowns. The worst part is it's self-inflicted, self-endorsed. Lockdown measures have become economically unsustainable in South Africa, and small businesses are feeling the brunt. Stats SA has published a business impact survey indicating the devastating effects the ANC lockdown has had on South African businesses. Between 14 to 30 April 2020, just over 36% of firms indicated that they were forced to lay off staff as a short-term measure to cope with the effects of the lockdown. 9% of small businesses then indicated that they closed their doors permanently. The following industries were hit hardest: construction, community, social and personal services, agriculture, hunting, forestry and fisheries, and then government says that food security must be ensured. Besef die regering dat klein besighede die ruggraat van die ekonomie is? Besef die regering dat die regering self Suid-Afrika se ondergang veroorsaak? A survey by the South African Small Medium Enterprise Finance Association echoed Stats SA's data and showed that 3/4 of the small and micro businesses would close down if the lockdown runs beyond 30 June 2020. It's 28 July already and the lockdown is still in place. Daar word verwag dat daar vanjaar soveel as 4 miljoen werksgeleenthede in die slag gaan bly. Ons voel en sien dit alreeds. The Freedom Front Plus and South Africa needs government to create an environment that's conducive for small businesses to thrive and to ensure more job opportunities are created. Government can't create jobs, small businesses do. The time is long overdue to do away with the abrasive and restrictive legislation like BE and affirmative action to enable free trade to take place and the entrepreneurs to enrich their communities by stimulating the microeconomies. Daar is tans etniese groepe in Suid-Afrika wat opsetlik deur die regering uitgesluit word as finansiële hulp aan besighede verleen word. Hierdie optrede het tot gevolg dat verdere polarisering tussen rasse plaasvind en dra nie by tot nasiebou en die oorlewing van besighede en werksekerheid nie. Suid-Afrikaners moet begin verenig rondom 'n nuwe visie vir die toekoms. 'n Visie waar jy self beheer neem oor jou en jou nageslag se toekoms, gegrond op waardes, integriteit en eerlikheid, hardwerkendheid en wederwysige respek. Waardes wat nog altyd in die verlede vaste fondasie geskep het van 'n toekoms van veiligheid en voorspoed. Dit is wat ons almal wil hê. Dit is duidelik dat die regering nie welvaart wil skep nie, maar eerder almal wil laat groepeer en afhanklik hou van hom en dan net 'n gekose groepie kaders welvarend maak. Kom ons ondersteun mekaar, koop plaaslik, hoop op hoop teen hoop. Ons is nie naïef vir die realiteit van die dag nie. Ons sal nie toelaat dat hulle ons onderkry nie. Die VF+ was nog altyd gekant teen rasgebaseerde wetgewing en glo in regverdige, nie-diskriminerende wetgewing en regulasies. Met kundigheid en durf het ons aanvanklik die Suid-Afrikaanse ekonomie gevestig en gebou. Kom ons doen so voort. Slaan terug teen 'n regering wat jou nalatenskap wil ontneem. Bou voort met trots en vertroue in God. Dankie adjunkvoorsitter.
Baie dankie agbare Dutoy. Ons gaan voort met die debat and we are calling on the Honorable R.D. Mackenzie of the Western Cape.
Thank you, Chairperson. Proud to represent the Western Cape this afternoon in this debate. Chairperson, yesterday we passed the 4-month mark of the national lockdown in South Africa. We have witnessed tremendous challenges during this pandemic, the likes of which none of us have ever prepared for. Our economy was prior to the lockdown in recession, gender-based violence has been on the rise, and the destruction and looting of both public and private properties including small businesses, continue to plague us. And yet just a few days ago, outside the gates of Parliament, police aggressively stopped a peaceful protest of small business owners and employees. Innocent, unarmed protesters wore masks and were socially distanced, but they were met with water cannons and stun grenades. One must ask then, where is this concerted security effort when land is invaded, businesses are robbed, and entrepreneurs live in fear? Chairperson, although the 4-month mark of lockdown is no milestone to celebrate, I can report that the Western Cape government has made significant contribution in saving both life and livelihoods in the province, even in the face of uncertain policy environment and often inconsistent, irrational lockdown regulations. Thankfully, provincial government under our Department of Finance and Economic Opportunities committed 14 million rand to the support of small businesses and encourage workplace safety. I'm also proud to report that we have 11,000 COVID-19 business safety toolkits currently being distributed across the length and breadth of the Western Cape. And I was privileged to be part of this initiative a few weeks ago in Mitchells Plain, which is my constituency. The toolkits provide small businesses with vital PPE materials, leaflets for customers, and information posters for employees. Just yesterday, Provincial MEC David Mania launched a 5-part weekly webinar series to provide support for business in order to open safety during Alert Level 3, which still poses strict regulations to the tourism sector in particular. Furthermore, the pledge 5 million rand towards the launch of the Tourism Development Product Fund for both old and new tourism products is a proud example of how provincial government filling the gaps left by National Department of Tourism, of which small businesses are heavily reliant on. In conjunction with Westgrow and the City of Cape Town, the Western Cape makes available the COVID-19 Support Finder, an online tool for connecting businesses with resources and partnerships they need to keep their doors open during this difficult period. It is noted that many who utilize this tool are in fact residents in other provinces other than the Western Cape. Chairperson, I want to add that these measures have been taken along with the province's Red Cape reduction strategy and its ongoing Jump mobile app that helps business owners overcome challenges in starting new business ventures. Amidst all this chaos, Cape Town was ranked amongst the most innovative globally during the pandemic. Stellenbosch was the first in Africa to receive the Safe Travel stamp from the World Travel and Tourism Council, and long before we had the slightest idea of this pandemic, the provincial government committed to boost an additional 200 small businesses across the province. Chairperson, these achievements and initiatives are as a result of cooperation and engagement among businesses, entrepreneurs, the provincial government, and all our departments. We realize that the COVID-19 knows no boundaries, and thus the whole of government and society must muster unparalleled efforts to match the most extraordinary of times. It is with sincere regret that we find ourselves in a position where national government has not come to the table for support of small businesses. Instead of working with us in SMEs, too often Pretoria does just the opposite. The current phase of the lockdown allows individuals to re-engage in activities, but our tourism sector and many small businesses who offer job opportunities continues to suffer as a result of damaging regulations which are at best blunt instruments and at worst destructive to entire sectors. The flip-flopping on regulations by the governing party has left us with little faith, a struggling economy, and growing unemployment, which can indeed be described as a rising second pandemic. Chair, I've mentioned the achievements spearheaded by the DA-led Western Cape government. More than this, and despite little to no help from the promises made by national government, I am proud of every entrepreneur and SME employer who have taken courage during this very difficult time. Many have provided innovation in the midst of a crisis, keeping food on the table for their families and hope for a future alive. But it is with dismay that we have noted the closure of many businesses which could not withstand this economic hardship and illogical regulatory environment. Chairperson, it is simply unacceptable that we rely on small businesses to help reduce unemployment and boost economic development in our country, but then offer them a national government which cannot stem the tide of corruption, even in the provision of PPE during a national crisis. It has been reported that under the current conditions, 240,000 jobs are at risk in the tourism industry alone, and 1 billion stand to be lost in the wine industry in the Western Cape. Many of these entities operate under small, medium, and micro enterprise policies and regulations. I appeal urgently to our national ministers and offer our Minister of Small Businesses who are here with us today the following solutions. She needs to table a turnaround strategy to mitigate the risk of small business collapse. She must revise the regulations and allowing for the safe opening of leisure tourism and offer a comprehensive relief package to the sector. She must review the blanket ban on alcohol and curfew in favor of adopting a risk-adjusted approach so that restaurants and their suppliers, many of them are small businesses, can get back on track. Chairperson, when government at all levels work with small businesses, we see new opportunity. We witness employees hold on to their jobs and new prospects arise. And we see innovation and creativity and ultimately a path of safety because jobs save lives. The Honorable MEC of Makone of Limpopo said that South Africa would have been in a serious bloodbath if it wasn't for the government intervention. I don't know which planet the Honorable Minister MEC lives in, but we are in a jobs bloodbath. Over 3 million people has lost their jobs and is going to get worse. Hundreds of thousands of small businesses have already closed down. In fact, to quote Premier David Makura, the ANC Premier, he said it's likely 2 million people lose their jobs before the end of this year. The Honorable Minister of Small Business also quoted Charles Dickens earlier on, and I'm going to quote a Dickinson. In fact, Emily Dickinson wrote, "Forever is composed of now." So to the Minister, change the regulations now so that small businesses doesn't have to wait forever. This is possible. Our people to whom we account are resilient, and through policies, regulations, and decisive interventions, we can charter a prosperous direction to a world of new normal beyond the pandemic, with the hope of prosperity and opportunity for all, because in the end, jobs saves lives. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. The next speaker will be Honorable Timothy of the Democratic Alliance, Pratasad.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chairperson. Honourable members, fellow South Africans. Business in South Africa pays tax, employs South Africans, and contributes to the Solidarity Fund. However, if you have never owned a business, you would not know that, as I expect is the case for most of the members of this council. As alluded to by my colleague, Honourable Lont, there are none that are so blind as those who will not see. I concluded my last speech earlier this afternoon with the following. One's dedication to ideology is directly proportional to your distance from the problem. The ramblings I've heard here today show that the ANC is completely divorced from reality in our country, and it is sickening. Let us be clear, the COVID-19 crisis has created an environment which should be focused on saving businesses, not wiping them out in an orgy of ideological excess. The ANC today has been big on transformation. Transform this, transform that. But what the ANC government has done is to ensure transformation from an ailing economy to complete devastation, from the rickety bridge into the raging torrent below. It started with the rantings of the minister on BBBEE. Instead of understanding that the calls to help all businesses was a genuine plea in the interests of employers and employees alike, the minister screeched and shouted and branded that appeal as counter-revolutionary. And so, overnight, spaza shops were closed and hot chicken was banned. Sole proprietors were told that they did not count and could not register with the CIPC. Then the minister and her crony Comrade Patel turned their attention to clothing and told South Africans what they could and could not wear. And all along this road of crazy, Minister Dlamini Zuma is still humming along to the When People Zol beats of Max Hurrell. Following close behind is Cowboy Klele, determined to turn smokers and doppers into convicted criminals. And then the spectator president has watched on, content with the creation of this incapable state. And the result? Statistics South Africa has revealed that in April 2020 alone, 195 businesses hit the wall. Hit the wall. Gone under. Bankrupt. Kaput. Finish and claw. And as Honorable Boshoff said, When the dust settles after the revolutionary stampede, there will be a lot more. You can bank on that. So the question is this incompetence, or is it all part of government's plan? It is extremely interesting to read the following document straight out of the glorious Soviet handbook. It is titled Reconstruction, Growth and Transformation, Building a New Inclusive Economy, a discussion document prepared by the ANC's Economic Transformation Committee. I quote from section 4. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrust onto the state a greater responsibility and role in the economy and society. Trust in public institutions and government is on the rise. This, however, may be short-lived. Due to subjective errors, whatever they are, the capacity of South Africa's democratic state has been weakened. Poor cadership has resulted in the weakening of state capacity, which has been compounded by corruption. There has been a lack of honesty about what can and cannot be achieved at particular points. At last, something I can agree with the ANC. Moreover, the document continues, the COVID-19 pandemic has legitimized a greater and more active role of the state in guiding the economy. It has forced a rethink on public services that are now seen as the necessary investment rather than a liability. Central banks are increasingly being called upon to assume a more active and direct role in supporting the real economy. So, my fellow South Africans, we can now see this was all part of the Stalinist-inspired ANC plan. Smash the economy, chase away or crush the pesky bourgeoisie, businesses, and reduce all South Africans to being part of the obedient, dependent, and ever-grateful proletariat. Viva the magnificent, glorious National Democratic Revolution. You missed one thing, though. You missed one thing, the Democratic Alliance. And as Honorable Mackenzie pointed out, while there is breath in our bodies, we will fight you every step of the way, every inch, to protect the rights of South Africans who deserve a future of freedom.
Your time is lapsed. Thank you.
Future of opportunity, a celebration of our diversity. Siyabangena.
Honorable Dangor, you will be the next to continue with the debate.
Thank you very much,
Ambassador.
Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Minister, Deputy Minister, MECs, fellow members of the NCOP and special delegates. The National Treasury makes a point that the COVID-19 pandemic has challenged an already weakened fiscal position in South Africa. This means that we were already in a state of deficit, our revenue collection is low, and expenditure demands are high. We have to strike a balance. Furthermore, there is an expectation of tax revenue underperformance. This requires extraordinary measures to stimulate the economy, growth, and thus raise revenue collection. The observation by government SMMEs is that will be affected at two levels. That as businesses slow down and as suppliers of products and services during the lockdown period is a correct observation. The question is, what measures are developed to mitigate against the reality facing SMMEs and other businesses in South Africa? The relief measures initiated by the government to support small businesses in the face of COVID-19 and the lockdown has not gone unnoticed. As expected, many SMMEs applied for these relief measures given the fiscal constraints that we have referred to earlier. The move by the department to ensure that at least 50% of national and provincial development finance institutions provide finance to SMMEs. The department is also undertaken to ensure that at least 1,000 of their designated products to be produced by the state are sourced from and produced by local SMMEs and cooperatives, importantly cooperatives. It also undertook to expose SMMEs and cooperatives to the international market opportunities through an e-commerce platform. These include women-owned businesses registered on an international platform. These positive measures are welcomed as they will advance our agenda of economic transformation and economic growth. The other concerning matter is the development and growth of both rural and township economies. Development of entrepreneurship in the township and rural areas will add to the decentralization of the economy. We must ensure that the development of special economic zones is strongly linked to the growth of SMMEs and cooperatives in this sector. It must also be linked to the township and village and tribe enterprises support. The tourism sector is one of the economic sectors that has been hard hit by the lockdown, as it relies on both domestic and international tourism, as we know. Movement of people for tourism reasons has been restricted the world over as nations respond to and avoid the spread of COVID-19. The tourism sector is expected to record a 75% reduction in revenue collection. We are confident that the COVID-19 loan guarantee scheme worth 200 billion will assist the sector. Also, the temporary employee relief scheme will assist the sector during the lockdown period. The Tourism Relief Fund has also assisted at least 4,000 businesses. We reaffirm our stance for economic transformation and inclusive economic growth. However, there have been some in our society who wish to reverse the transformation agenda. We have witnessed court cases to challenge the advancement of Black economic empowerment during COVID-19. The court challenges in the two favorite courts, these challenges did not find success in the courts of law. The courts ruled that there was a need to be explicit on the policy interventions for youth, women, and people with disabilities in the relief measures. Turning to the Honorable Tim, I must say to him that nobody knows what the policy of the DA actually is. It's such a mystery. Even DA members don't know what their economic policy is. Maybe if they published it, people will appreciate what it actually means, and we can all read what they say. You know, if we knew what it was, we even look at it seriously. And also just to remind all of the DA members that colonization didn't start 25 years ago. It started on some April day in 1652. On the question of life, preservation, and life, I think it's important regarding the schools that the preservation of life is more important than other issues. And when we talk about common sense, maybe we should talk about local sense. Local sense in the Western Cape in particular. Honorable Mackenzie, the hospitals, the trauma units had less people when there was no supply of alcohol to the people. With the supply of alcohol, the trauma units are facing greater numbers. I think let's look at that. We talk about land invasions. As one thing, land invasions are going out throughout the country during this particular period. And I think it needs to be dealt with in a holistic sense to deal with the issue. On the question of tourism and flights, travel from international countries are not going to happen. Not now. And hopefully when it happens in the future, it'll happen in a responsible way, not to spread this particular virus. The initial people that actually brought this virus here came from Italy. They were people who came from Italy that spread the first part of the virus. So I think we need to look at, Honorable De Tooy, hier het nie begin vandag nie. Dit begin op 'n Aprildag in 1652. En destyds het die probleem al reeds begin. Wat ons vandag mee sit, is die probleem van wat gebeur het dan, wat gebeur het met apartheid, and what we're trying to overcome is the history of apartheid. And you can't undo the history of apartheid in 25 years that took almost 400 years from 1652 to build up. I thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dangor. We will now call on the Honorable the Minister of Small Business Development to conclude the debate. Honorable
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Honorable Fayela, the reprioritization of the Township Entrepreneurship Fund only affects the department in terms of the genuine concern that you raise, that the funding of small businesses is not enough. When we have publicly stated that at a minimum, the department requires 9.7 billion rands to implement the schemes effectively, we are allocated 2.3 billion rands. However, the adjustment budget we are debating today prioritizes township and village enterprises with specific schemes and dedicated numbers for each province and each district. We are willing to share the details per district, but I have shared the details per province. So that matter we are addressing, but we'll appreciate the continued support for a larger budget for the Department of Small Business Development. Honorable Lund, I was taught by my grandmother that common sense is not common, but also that common sense is not a gift. It is a punishment because you have to deal with everyone who doesn't have it. So when one is lacking of common sense and also ignore facts, I can only feel the severity of the punishment I have to endure. Honorable Lund, please go and read our performance report and you realize that the 60% performance you are talking to is a figment of the imagination. But I'm not surprised because instead of focusing on the work of the Department of Small Business Development, you are focused on everything else other than but our work. Maybe the poor response and non-response to our programs that is receiving by the DA-led Western Cape government is a reflection of the way the DA views the future of small businesses in these countries. If you were concerned, you will do away with cheap politics and debate what has been tabled and cancel the gaps that may be outstanding. Honorable Boshoff, the requirement for tax compliance and UIF compliance should not be misconstrued. If this country has to account for a number of small businesses, including informal businesses that exist, and to cap other illicit activities that happen in the sector, you will require those businesses to be registered for SARS and UIF. First and foremost is that the requirement is not compliance, is registration. And we have made arrangements with both SARS and UIF to allow small businesses, including informal businesses, to register and make sure that if there are compliance issues, they will sign an acknowledgement of a compliance requirement that they will fulfill later. And by the way, if we didn't do that requirement, the UIF will not have been able to pay the small businesses that were going to be excluded from the TESA. It's because we made that arrangement and said we'll have the small businesses registering for UIF, that those small businesses were not compliant to UIF today were able to benefit from the UIF. So that is beneficial to our people. And by the way, majority of small businesses and informal businesses and micro businesses are exempt from paying tax. And SARS is willing to work with us. They have a dedicated unit that deals with small businesses or SMEs to work with us to make sure that we make it easier for small businesses and informal and micro businesses to participate and to be exempt without difficulties. And by the way, the speed at which the city of Cape Town that you refer to as the shining example and the beacon of South Africa, services and supports informal businesses owned by foreign nationals, whereas the small businesses in the Cape Flats cannot access business licenses. It amazes me. It begs the questions that has to be answered. The Immigration Act of South Africa requires foreign nationals to invest or to participate only if they're in businesses where they can invest 5 million rands and above. Please tell me which spaza shop, which street vendor requires a startup capital of 5 million rands at a minimum, because I do not know of such. And let's argue maybe it's refugees. Let's go to the records of Home Affairs. In South Africa, we only have 90,000 refugees that are signed up, that have been approved or admitted in this country by Home Affairs. Tell me that all the foreign nationals that are participating are in this country legally. And by the way, me and you will have a meaningful debate or discussion about how to assist small businesses when we have resolved the problems of small businesses in Khayelitsha and the rest of the Cape Flats, because that's where our people reside. Look around you. If you have eyes, all countries are prioritizing their own citizens. In Botswana, a South African cannot own a spaza shop. In Zimbabwe, a South African cannot be a street vendor. Why are we prioritizing other people and not our own? Our responsibility is to prioritize South Africans because they have nowhere else to go but this country. And it has to work for them in this country, and we are resolved to make it work for them in this country. I do not know whether it is worth responding to Honorable Bartenson after the ambassador has addressed him on the issues. But the saying says, no persons are more frequently wrong than those who will not admit that they are wrong. And the DA's use of this pandemic is the illustration that they'll never admit that they're wrong. I had hoped the opposition parties, with the exception of the IFP, would have engaged us on whether the 5 priorities that we're saying we're focusing on of township and rural entrepreneurship, informal business support, promoting localization and industrialization, ensuring business viability, and promoting participation of youth, women, and people with disability, and on the court's insistence, Black people also. We'll have a debate about whether we are wrong or right. But it's very pathetic that there's no such a debate. We are focusing on cheap politics. And Sesami Namatebul. Ay makaya ya politiki, ay makaya ideology. Loko wina ni EFF, ninga support.
Kuba minister, Kuba minister, Kuba.
On a point of order.
You've got a minute more, Honorable Minister.
On a point of order, we're not going to listen to a minister who comes here with arrogance. You must tell us how much you benefited from the CR fund.
Hey, Kuba, na minister ngazolala lumphethe umbatha Kuba. Wena la wena
Lalela,
Debate imqala nemali wena.
Hey, Honorable Minister, conclude the debate.
Izokuhlula le izobhala.
Izobhala wena wena mabasa la nonsense indaba yakho.
Honorable members, order. Can we have order? Can we have order here? Honorable Minister, conclude the debate.
Honorable Matebula, I makaya ideology, I makaya austerity budget. I makaya ku small business definitely supportiwa or there meshweni ti hlaisa maphelo abo. Akufani na wena uri because ba austerity budget awena we support. Our support or the small business ifuniwa hi department. Hi department ya hina with the butomi wa bona phambi. Iwe ufocus ka maka ya ku austerity budget. I table austerity budget hina la. He table ku he lava ku support the informal businesses. He table ku he lava ku support the businesses ka township in the rural areas ta hina. He table ku he lava ku pfuna vanhu va hina u va tendela tipahla va ti makela ti furniture ta vona. And honorable members, as I conclude, I'd like to extend my appreciation
Where is
to the team.
Kuba minister, Kuba.
You had 1 minute.
To the team that has supported me during this pandemic, the MPCs who have come to the party, the staff of the department and our agencies who sacrifice their time and work throughout to make sure that we deliver and support small businesses.
Wena mutsamai.
Honorable members, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Chairperson, Chief Whip, the rest of the special delegates that have participated in the debate and those that have been attending, Honorable permanent delegates. With this, we conclude on the debate for the 2 votes and we conclude the business of the day. The House is adjourned. Thank you very much to everyone.
Well done.
Thank you, Deputy Chair.
Thank
Thank you, Minister, for providing clarity. How last didn't want to listen. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Melissa. Well done.
Thank you, Whip. Thank you, Whip.
Well done, Minister.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank
The DA was on fire.
Nice.
DA was on fire, yes.
Siyabonga, Mr. Khai. Chair.
Thank you so much.
Mamas.
Thank you.
And the team. Thank you.
Thank you, KZN, my folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Dangor.
Thank you. Cheers.